Chapter 843. It would have been better if he hadn't opened his mouth. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing and suddenly curled her lips. That's not how it should be used. Really? Ling Jing was still holding the hairdryer in his hand. He put the hairdryer aside, held Su Peijian's waist and approached her. Then tell me, how should I describe my face? Charm all living things? Handsomeness? His long and narrow phoenix eyes were slightly raised. When the man smiled, he did have the capital to be bewitching. Su Peijian looked at him and shook her head. As thick as a city wall, bullets can't penetrate it. Ling Jing narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Peijian's serious joke. He suddenly reached out and scratched the back of her waist. The two of them spent more time together, and he knew that she was very sensitive there. You dare to laugh at me? As soon as he made this move, Su Peijian couldn't help but laugh. She twisted her body, trying to avoid his hand. Stop. Ling Jing, enough. Enough. She was still sick, and being treated like this by him. She laughed until she couldn't breathe. Her beautiful face was as red as a pomegranate flower in June. Ling Jing stopped and looked at the woman's charming appearance. Suddenly he was tempted. He lowered his head and kissed her lips. Before Su Peijian could come back to her senses, she was kissed by him. In front of her was Ling Jing's enlarged face, and his seductive phoenix eyes were filled with her shadow. Her breath stopped, and in the next second, her body was pressed against the bed by him. She was usually no match for him, and now that she was sick, she was no match for Ling Jing. She put her hand on his chest and pushed, but she couldn't. In between breaths, she reached out and held his shoulder. Ling Jing. His breathing was hot, his face was burning, and his heart was beating fast. She shook her head and controlled the wild thoughts in her heart. I am sick. Don't mess around. I'll infect you. Really? Ling Jing's breathing was a little heavy. He raised his hand and touched Su Peijian's forehead. Then infect me. That way you'll be fine. How could that work? Su Peijian completely lost her mind in the other party's plunder. With his movements, she fell into the tide of passion that he brought. At the same time, there was also the joy that he gave her. When Ling Jing walked in, she saw Su Peijian on the phone. She was in good spirits. Although the two of them had messed around yesterday, Su Peijian had sweated a lot. After a good night's sleep, she felt much better when she woke up this morning. Xiang Kaiping was worried and called her several times. There were also Su Qinghui and Lin Feixing. Su Peijian told them that she was safe and felt that they were making a mountain out of a molehill. It was just a cold, not some incurable disease. He put down the phone and saw Ling Jing enter the door. There was a rare softness in her eyes. Morning. Ling Jing stepped forward, walked behind her, and wrapped her waist into her arms. What do you think? How do you feel? I'm fine. He held her a little too tightly. Su Peijian wanted to move away from his embrace, but he turned her around to face him. Since you're fine, let's go out. Go out. Su Peijian rejected instinctively. Where? A date. Ling Jing? It's boring to stay at home anyway. Why don't we go out for a walk? Maybe you'll be in a good mood after going out for a walk. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing's sloppy face and listened to his specious words. You have a lot of fallacies. No. What I said is true. If you don't believe me, follow me out and try. You'll know. Su Peijian smiled. After lying in bed for so many days, she was really tired. When she met the expectation in Ling Jing's eyes, she nodded. Okay, where do you want to go? Anywhere. I'm fine with anything. Su Peijian thought for a moment. Rome City was still very cold, and the neighborhood where she lived was considered a business circle. Then let's walk. Don't drive. We'll go wherever we go. No problem. Ling Jing got up and went to get Su Peijian clothes. Looking at his attentive figure, Su Peijian's lips curved subconsciously. When she realized that Ling Jing could bring her such emotions, she suddenly turned her face away uncomfortably. The two of them held hands and walked out of Rome Garden together. Because it was the weekend, there were many people on the road. The two of them didn't have a destination, so they just walked forward hand in hand. There was a department store under Su Peijian's name not far ahead. As she walked, her occupational disease flared up, and she wanted to take a look. Ling Jing didn't ask where she was going. He followed her wherever she went. However, When the two of them walked on the road together, the number of people turning their heads was very high. One of them had a charming and delicate appearance, and the other had evil features. Ling Jing didn't notice the gazes on him, and just followed Su Peijian into the department store. As usual, the first floor was basically cosmetics and jewelry. On the weekend, there were many customers at the cosmetics counter. Although there weren't many customers at the jewelry store, there were still quite a few. Halfway through, Ling Jing suddenly took Su Peijian's hand and entered the Patek next to him. It was the Philippe counter. You want to buy a watch? I'm just looking around. Su Peijian followed him into the door. She had many of Philippe's watches. They were all in Lin City. In the past, she often received these gifts on her birthday. But ever since she came out of prison, she didn't wear them much. She thought that Ling Jing was looking for her, but she didn't expect him to walk to the female watch counter. Hello, sir. Is there anything you like? Let me see this one. The shop assistant took it out. Ling Jing picked it up and put it on Su Peijian's hand. Ling Jing. She didn't intend to buy a watch. There were already many at home. It suits you very well. The rose gold dial was simple and didn't have too many decorations. There was only a circle of broken diamonds around it. Try it on. He personally put the watch on Su Peijian. Su Peijian's wrist was slender and small. The watch unexpectedly suited her. She looked up at Ling Jing, who was holding her hand and admiring it. It looks good. As he spoke, he took out a card and handed it to the shop assistant. I'll take this one. Just wear it and leave. Su Peijian glanced at him. That card seemed to be given to him by her. As if knowing what she was thinking, Ling Jing leaned close to her ear. Although it's your card, since you gave it to me, it's my money, right? He was right. Su Peijian had nothing to say. The moment the shop assistant turned around, Ling Jing whispered to her again. I gave you a watch. Shouldn't you return the favor? You can buy it yourself if you like. No, I want you to give it to me. Ling Jing held her hand with a persistent face. The meaning of your gift is naturally different, isn't it? Su Peijian glanced at him, and rarely did she refute. Her eyes searched around the counter, and finally settled on a classic retro piece with a black surface. This one. Take it out and let me see. The shop assistant took out the watch and Su Peijian handed it to Ling Jing. However, he stood still and looked at her with a hint in his eyes. I didn't give it to you like this just now. This guy, he was really. Su Peijian picked up the watch, grabbed Ling Jing's hand, and put it on for him. It had to be said that she had good taste. This watch matched Ling Jing's temperament very well. Not bad. Ling Jing smiled. He was very satisfied with Su Peijian's understanding. I think it's not bad either. Looking at Su Peijian's slightly smiling face, he suddenly leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. I like it very much, thank you. Su Peijian had never behaved like this in public. For a moment, her face was full of uneasiness. She looked around and found that the shop assistants were teasing her. She took out her card as if nothing had happened and handed it to the shop assistant to swipe. Don't worry. Ling Jing shook his wrist. I will definitely wear it well and take good care of it. These words sounded like words of love. Su Peijian didn't want to believe it, but when she met Ling Jing's serious eyes, she inexplicably believed that what he said was true. The entire morning was neither fast nor slow. The two of them walked and stopped from time to time. Later, they got a lot of trophies. Time passed just like that as they strolled around. It was almost noon. Ling Jing looked at the time. Are you hungry? What do you want to eat? Whatever. Let's eat Cantonese food. Something light. You haven't recovered from your illness yet. Su Peijian couldn't help but look at him because of his words. Don't look at me. You can only eat light food now. Su Peijian didn't say anything. The two of them found a good-looking Cantonese restaurant nearby and had lunch. Su Peijian thought that this was the end. She could go home, but Ling Jing dragged her to watch a movie. I don't want to watch it. Since it's a date, we naturally have to do a full set. Let's go. If you don't want to watch it, I allow you to sleep in the theater. Su Peijian was annoyed by his words. Then I might as well go home and sleep. That won't do. You promised to accompany me today. How can you go back on your word? Whether she agreed or not, Ling Jing took her to the theater. She didn't know when he bought the tickets. When they arrived at the theater, he directly picked up the tickets and took her into the theater. Su Peijian hadn't watched a movie for a long time. Ling Jing chose a standard Hollywood sci-fi film. The male and female leads traveled in space. The male lead woke up unexpectedly. He was lonely, so he also woke up the female lead. Then the two of them experienced a romantic space trip together. Su Peijian was a little tired, but she didn't really fall asleep. After watching the movie very seriously, she found that Ling Jing was the one who fell asleep when the movie ended. He just leaned there with his eyes closed. The stray hair on his forehead hung down, and his quiet sleeping face made him look like an innocent child. They sat in the couple's seat, and there were only two of them. Other people around had already left. Su Peijian wasn't in a hurry to get up. She just quietly watched as she met Ling Jing. The rascal when they first met. The light flirting after he clung to her. The ruthlessness when he was stuck in traffic. And the gentleness when he took care of her when she was sick. Ling Jing, what kind of person are you? There really weren't many things in Su Peijian's life that could make her curious. She was born with wealth that ordinary people couldn't reach. And she also had a family background and appearance that everyone envied. For the first time in her life, she was a little curious about a man. Chapter 844. The credits were already playing on the screen. The interlude was very nice, but the lights were very dim. Ling Jing opened her eyes at this time and looked straight at her. Her hand was still hanging in the air. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw her slender fingertips. His almond-shaped eyes raised slightly. He looked at her with a smile in his eyes. Holding her hand, he didn't care what kind of situation they were in. He opened his mouth and put her fingertips into his lips. Su Peijian had experience, but no one had ever flirted with her like this. She wanted to pull her hand back, but Ling Jing had already gotten up. He bit her fingertips with his teeth without using any force. Instead, he stared straight at her face. Are you trying to take advantage of me? With something in his mouth, his words were a little slurred. Su Peijian wanted to pull her hand back, but he put his other hand on her waist and pulled her into his arms. Su Peijian pulled her fingers out, and Ling Jing grabbed her hand again. He seemed to be smiling very proudly. How is it? Are you mesmerized by my beauty? This person was really shameless. Su Peijian looked at the smug look on his face calmly, her expression not changing at all. If you don't have beauty, how can you be worth 2 million? This woman. TSK. Ling Jing grabbed her hand and bit it again. His eyes were tinged with anger. Do you have to say such disappointing words at this time? I don't think it's disappointing. I think it's the truth. She had indeed bought him with money. Was he afraid that she would say it? Ling Jing looked at her. Just when Su Peijian thought he would be angry, he suddenly kissed her lips forcefully. Crazy. Su Peijian was anxious. They were in a movie theater, and there might be cleaners coming in to clean up later. She struggled for a while, but she couldn't break away from his hand. He kissed her until she was almost suffocated. Then he let her go. He stepped back a little and looked at her face. Woman, at least you affirmed my appearance. Su Peijian shook her head, a little disapproving of his thick skin. She got up and wanted to leave, but Ling Jing grabbed her back on his lap and sat her down. You're leaving just like that? What else? I fell asleep and didn't finish watching it. Why don't we watch another one? If you want to watch it, you can watch it here alone. I won't keep you company. Ling Jing knew that it was time to stop. Without insisting any further, he got up and held her hand as they walked away. It was still early when the two of them left the cinema. The weather these few days was pretty good. Although it was a little cold, he was used to staying here, so it was all right. Where do you want to go next? Let's go home. Sure. Ling Jing listens to her saying go home, and stretches out his long arm to hold her. If you say go home, then go home. Su Peijian was startled when he put his arm around her shoulder. Home. To her, Rome Garden was just an apartment, a place to rest. Actually, it couldn't be called a home. Turning to look at Ling Jing, she was a little curious about him for the first time. She swallowed the question she wanted to ask when it reached her mouth. Forget it. It's just a relationship between a kept woman and a kept woman. There was no need to ask too clearly. Look at me like this. Do you think I'm getting more and more handsome? If someone were to see Ling Jing's current appearance, Their eyeballs would probably fall out. Su Peijian looked away. Forget it. She shouldn't be curious. Tell me, isn't it? Ling Jing wants an answer. Su Peijian glances at him and shakes her head. I just find that your skin is getting thicker and thicker. Woman, you don't mean what you say. I know you like me. You think too much. Su Peijian is unmoved. There is not even a trace of fluctuation in her eyes. Your narcissism is useless in front of me. Am I thinking too much? Why do I feel that you like me more and more? Ling Jing. It's not dark yet. After saying this, she doesn't speak again. Liking his appearance and certain abilities are indeed related. But this person? Forget it. Ling Jing secretly gritted his teeth. But he didn't give up and continued to walk forward with her in his arms. One day, he will make her love him so much that she can't extricate herself. However, before that, he has to think about how to make this woman fall in love with him. Su Peijian has been sick for a few days, and her work has been delayed a lot. After dinner, she ignored Ling Jing and went into the study. Most of the money in her hands has been used to participate in Su Qinghui's project. Although the share is not much, if it makes money, it will be quite a considerable income. In addition, the funds and securities she bought before have recently appreciated quite well. She browsed through the major financial news at home and abroad. After thinking about it, she sold 2 of the funds and bought the other 2 funds. She is quite skilled in buying and selling. The increase of money can't fill the void in her heart. But other than that, she can't find more fun. At this time, Ling Jing entered the door with a glass of milk in his hand. Woman, do you want me to remind you that you are still a patient now? Putting the glass of milk in front of Su Peijian, Ling Jing glanced at the computer screen, and then quickly looked away. Su Peijian picked up the glass of milk. The warm touch warms her from the palm of her hand to the heart. She glanced at Ling Jing, and didn't get angry at the other party for breaking into the study. Thank you. Woman, I actually prefer you to thank me in another way. Ling Jing's words have a deeper meaning. Su Peijian didn't answer. She put the milk on the table and looked at Ling Jing's face. Didn't you say last time that you wanted to invest? Do you still want to? Ling Jing raised his eyebrows. Didn't you say that I can't afford your fees? You can't afford it, Su Peijian said bluntly. But just take it as a thank you gift for this glass of milk. And thank you for taking care of her when she was sick these few days. Then I'm making a profit? Yes. Do you want it? Yes. Of course. Ling Jing leaned close to her ear and gently breathed on her cheek. But I've spent all my money. How about I pay the debt with my body? This person is really... Su Peijian didn't expect Ling Jing to be serious. She raised her hand and pushed his head away. She looked at him very seriously. Ling Jing, although it's easy for you to make money now, it's not a long-term solution. I'll help you invest. After you make money, you can do something else, whether it's a small business or a job. You'll be better than you are now. How long can it last if you treat people with beauty? It was rare for her to be kind. This was also a friendly reminder. What? Are you planning to abandon me? Don't worry, woman. Even if you don't want me, there are still many women lining up behind me, crying and shouting for me to pamper them. Do you believe me? I'm serious. Su Peijian didn't mean to joke with him. In prison, she had seen women who had lost their footing. Some were voluntary and some weren't. No matter which one it was, those women would eventually find that such money was easy to come by. But it was not a long-term solution. Or, you can go learn something. Either way, it'll be better than what you're doing now. She was not a nosy person. She would say such a thing, because Ling Jing had taken care of her these days. She could feel that Ling Jing wasn't a bad person. Although he was a little sloppy and picky, Su Peijian was willing to give him some conscientious advice, for the sake of him taking care of her so carefully. Ling Jing looked at the seriousness in Su Peijian's eyes. He was afraid that she really thought of him as a gigolo. He smiled lightly, reached out and gently lifted her chin, looking her in the eyes. Are you planning for my future? TSK. Woman, you still say you don't like me? If you don't like me, why are you thinking so much about me? Whatever you think. Su Peijian didn't push his hand away. Instead, she looked straight into the depths of his eyes. This is just a suggestion. Woman, I'm really touched that you're so considerate of me. Ling Jing put his hand on the side of her neck, leaned close to her face, and pressed his forehead against hers. There's nothing I can do to repay you. I can only devote myself to you. Here he goes again. Su Peijian pushed him away, stepped back a little, and looked at the computer screen. I promised you before, and I still have to give you $1 million. I'll use this $1 million to invest in you. For 3 months. After 3 months, all the money you earn will belong to you. When the time comes, you can take this money and start some business or small business. Ling Jing narrowed his eyes at her. Hey, but didn't Xinjing say? Can Xinjing's words be trusted? Ling Jing sneered. The most suspicious one is either first brother or third brother. Of course, second brother, fourth brother, and fifth brother can't be taken lightly. Get someone to keep an eye on them. If I don't show up, I will give these people a chance. The longer he stayed outside, the more excited those people would become. The easier it would be for him to find out their weaknesses. Yes, Gu Xiu knew that Ling Jing had made up his mind. He bowed and turned to leave. After he left, the room became quiet. Ling Jing curled his lips. Go back now. Then wouldn't his previous efforts be in vain? Su Peijian's attitude toward him had softened a lot because of her illness. Of course, he had to strike while the iron was hot. Today, he had just thought of a wonderful trick to soften Su Peijian's attitude even further. When the door opened, he looked at the time. Gu Xiu should have gone down. He usually calculated that when his subordinates came to assign work, he would never let Su Peijian meet. Seeing her enter the door, he got up to greet her. You're back. How are you feeling? You haven't recovered yet, but you still want to be strong. He took the bag from Su Peijian's hand and put it aside. He watched her take off her coat and was about to take it. Su Peijian glanced at him because of his action. It had to be said that Ling Jing had become more and more considerate these days. What's wrong? Are you really not feeling well? Do you want to see a doctor? She didn't speak, and Ling Jing looked at her worriedly. He raised his hand to her forehead. You don't have a fever? Or are you feeling unwell? Pure concern, without any utilitarian thoughts. Su Peijian could feel it. She looked into Ling Jing's extremely beautiful almond-shaped eyes. A strange feeling came over her. If there was such a man who cared about you every day when you came home, it would feel good. If that was the case, what did it matter if they got married or not? Putting aside worldly prejudices, who said that women had to get married? She could earn money by herself, and buy what she wanted by herself. Even if she wanted a man, it was not difficult to spend money to buy a man's love and flattery. It sounded shocking, but how many women dreamed of such a life? Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian in a daze, and knew that his strategy at this time was working. He took a step forward, turned her body around, and led her to the direction of the sofa. If you feel tired, rest. Once again, your company won't collapse without you. Su Peijian sat down, and Ling Jing sat down next to her. He wanted to continue to express his concern, but his eyes saw the necklace on Su Peijian's neck. The shape of a six-pointed star was unique and generous, inlaid with broken diamonds, looking elegant and a little delicate. He looked at Su Peijian's face and suddenly narrowed his eyes. If he remembered correctly, when he sent Su Peijian out this morning, there was nothing on her neck. With Su Peijian's personality, it was not like she would go shopping alone. Ling Jing narrowed his eyes. His intuition told him that this necklace was definitely not Su Peijian's taste. Chapter 845. Su Peijian was still absent-minded, and didn't notice where Ling Jing was looking. Ling Jing looked at Su Peijian's face again. After looking her up and down, Ling Jing found that there was no other change except for the necklace. Woman. Turning her body to face him, Ling Jing's hand moved up and pointed at the necklace. It's a beautiful necklace. I didn't see you wearing it this morning. Did you buy it? Su Peijian came back to her senses and touched the necklace on her neck subconsciously. She had always disdained lying, so she didn't think about avoiding Ling Jing's question. No. No? Was it a gift? His half-joking and half-serious tone hid a hint of danger. Su Peijian didn't like the tone in his words. Her thoughts just now disappeared without a trace. She pushed Ling Jing away and got up to go back to her room. Ling Jing grabbed her arm and she sat back on his lap. Ling Jing, what are you doing? Ling Jing leaned close to her ear, opened his mouth, and bit her earlobe. Someone gave it to you? It's not a man, is it? Does it have anything to do with you? He looked as if she had done something wrong to him. Su Peijian frowned and reached out to push him away. Ling Jing was very strong and refused to let go of her waist. Ling Jing, let go of me. Ling Jing stared at the woman in front of him. At first glance, this woman was a delicate rose. But only he knew that this woman was beautiful, but she had no heart. Roses were thorny. This woman not only had thorns, but also no heart. She would eat people. She was simply a man-eating flower. Ling Jing, who was about to lose his temper, blinked his eyes and held back. He curled his lips and gently stroked the necklace around her neck with one hand. His movements were gentle, and his fingertips brushed her skin from time to time. He moved his face closer and pressed it against her cheek. Like to look at the stars? Su Peijian didn't speak. The atmosphere in front of her was a little ambiguous. She was no stranger to Ling Jing's intimacy, but this she subconsciously waved his hand away and pressed the necklace. It wasn't because she was guilty, but she felt that Ling Jing in front of her was dangerous. It was obvious that she was trying to protect herself. Ling Jing narrowed her eyes and looked at her beautiful neck. Suddenly she smiled. Since you like stargazing, of course I'll find a way to satisfy you. Ling Jing stood up as she spoke. At the same time, she pulled her up and led her outside. Ling Jing, what are you doing? I'll bring you to see the stars. Are you crazy? Who said I wanted to see the stars? Although what Lin Feixing said today did move her a little, she wasn't an artistic young woman who would want to go stargazing at night. But what can we do? I want you to see it now. While speaking, Ling Jing had already taken her out of the door. Just like last time, he didn't take anything other than his jacket and phone. The two of them had been intimate many times. Because of her kiss, Ling Jing's lips moved forward and deepened the kiss. No one cared about the starry sky anymore. And the venue was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. In front of her was Ling Jing's enlarged face. His eyes were evil, and at this moment they were deep. At this moment, Su Peijian clearly heard her heart skip a beat. The kiss had messed up their heartbeats and breathing. Ling Jing felt the soft body of the woman in his arms, and suddenly had the idea of doing this woman on the spot. But it was just a thought. He held back. He wrapped his arms around her waist, and pressed his forehead against hers. His masculine breath brushed against her face. Did you make a wish when you saw a meteor? Su Peijian did not speak. At that moment, her heartbeat was out of order, and she turned around. After a few breaths, she suppressed her emotions. That was just an accident. She no longer had the heart to look at the starry sky. Even if there were meteors, there was no way to divert the shock brought to her by the kiss just now. Illusion, it was all an illusion. It was also just a mistake. Su Peijian stared at the bright and vast starry sky. She closed her eyes. There were some things that she should make a decision about. Let's go. Let's go home. She tried to force his hand away from her waist. Ling Jing let go of his hand, but did not let her leave smoothly. Instead, he blocked her way. Don't you want to watch anymore? No. Su Peijian's expression was cold. There's nothing to see. Ling Jing turned his face to look at her, and wrapped his arms around her waist. Once again, she snuggled into his arms. Woman, are you always so duplicitous? Duplicitous? Why should I be duplicitous? Su Peijian removed his hand. Ling Jing, you don't need to feel so good about yourself. I think I can feel even better. He pointed at Su Peijian's heart. I heard it just now. Your heart is beating very fast. That's because you're tempted. Boring. Su Peijian waved his hand away and walked straight out. Ling Jing followed her. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. This planetarium has more than one room of astronomical telescopes. Don't you want to take a look? No, I'm not interested. But I'm interested. Ling Jing held her hand. Since we're here, we have to take a look. Otherwise it would be a pity. Right? Ling Jing. Su Peijian stopped and looked at him very seriously. Have you always been like this? What? Su Peijian stared straight into Ling Jing's eyes, as if trying to find his hidden secret in his eyes that were as bright as stars. If she's inexperienced in the world, Take her to see all the prosperity of the world. If her heart has been through the vicissitudes of life, take her to ride on a merry-go-round. If she's in love, take off your clothes. If she's seen countless people, take her to the stove. Ling Jing blinked, as if he didn't quite understand what Su Peijian meant. Su Peijian pulled out her hand and tapped Ling Jing's chest. You've been on the internet a lot, haven't you? Use different tricks to deal with different women. If you say I like stars, take me to the planetarium. If I say I like the sea, you'll definitely take me to the seaside to listen to the waves and see the sea view. Ling Jing, do you think I'll fall in love with you if you do this? Ling Jing was slightly stunned when he met Su Peijian's understanding gaze. For a moment, he almost couldn't restrain his inner admiration. However, it was only for a moment. He grew up in the Ling family, and the people in the Ling family were much more shrewd than Su Peijian. He looked at Su Peijian in shock, and there was a hint of accusation in his eyes. I don't understand what you're talking about, and I've never wanted you to fall in love with me, because I know very well that it's impossible. He lowered his eyes, and there seemed to be a flash of sadness in them. I admit that I was indeed unhappy just now, because that necklace let me know that you probably have other suitors. It's normal for an outstanding woman like you to have suitors, but I also know what our relationship is. You're my sugar daddy, and I'm just a little boy toy that you're keeping. Our relationship isn't equal, but that doesn't affect my mood to make you happy. I hope that even if you have other suitors, you won't be in a hurry to get rid of me. Because Ling Jing finally raised his head and looked at her with a very focused expression. Because I found that I like you. Su Peijian, I like you because you're you. Not because you're my sugar daddy. Not because you can bring me benefits. You may not believe me when I say this. I've had other women before, but there's never been a woman like you, who made me work so hard to please just to make you happy. I really just want to make you happy, even if it's just for a while. I know in my heart that our relationship is not a normal boyfriend and girlfriend, but I hope that even if we can't be together in the future, I can leave a mark in your heart. At least, I will be the unique Ling Jing. A Ling Jing who likes you, simply wants to make you happy, and wants to please you. Chapter 846. Can't I just do this? The planetarium was empty, and there was a faint echo when these words were spoken. Su Peijian's slender hands were pressed tightly against his chest. Under his chest, his heartbeat was steady and powerful, one beat after another. That drumming sound made her quickly withdraw her hand. She took a big step back, turned around, and walked out without looking back. The corners of Ling Jing's lips curled up. Looking at Su Peijian's almost fleeing figure, his heart was filled with pride. He was still very confident in his acting skills. Su Peijian, don't even think about escaping from the palm of my hand. He blinked his eyes, already making another decision in his heart. Soon, he restrained his expression and chased after Su Peijian. The cold wind was very cold. By the time Su Peijian returned home, she had almost calmed down. She went into the bathroom to take a shower, then sat back in front of the dressing table and did basic maintenance as usual. This time, Ling Jing took the initiative to step forward, took the moisturizer in her hand, and began to wipe her back. Su Peijian glanced at him through the mirror and didn't say anything. She let him carefully apply the moisturizer for her and spread it evenly. The man's palm was warm, and the strength was moderate. It was obvious that he had practiced a lot during this period of time. She looked at Ling Jing through the mirror, but he was focused on applying the moisturizer for her. His eyes were clear, and there was obviously no trace of lust. She lowered her eyes and thought of what Ling Jing had said in the planetarium just now. This person didn't speak a word of truth. She didn't believe a word of what he said. Ling Jing had already finished wiping her back and placed his chin in the pit of her neck. He looked at Su Peijian in the mirror with a focused gaze. Woman, you are so beautiful. Su Peijian was unmoved. There were too many people who praised her beauty, and she didn't feel anything when she heard it. Ling Jing put down the moisturizer in his hand, tilted his head, and kissed her cheek. Su Peijian subconsciously moved her body. Once the seed of suspicion was planted, it was not so easy to eliminate, especially for someone like Su Peijian, who had such a complicated experience. However, Ling Jing's skills were too good. During this period of time, he had also become too familiar with his body. It was easy, almost effortless, for her to provoke her response. Her body was picked up and placed on the bed. The man's chest was hot and firm, his hands deft and hot. She was dry wood, and he was the raging fire. She was the tree, and he was the vine. As for whether it was you pestering me or I pestering you, it was already unclear. When Su Peijian returned to the villa, Xiang Kaiping had not eaten yet. Seeing her come in, he stood up excitedly. "Why are you back? Have you recovered from your cold?" When Xiang Kaiping saw Su Peijian at home, there was surprise and joy in her eyes. "Why didn't you call me to tell me that you were coming? I'll get Xiaoya to buy some groceries." "Mom, don't be busy. Just eat whatever you have." "Yes. I'll ask Sister Zhang to add 2 more dishes." Xiang Kaiping had started her own business and made some money. However, she had always been frugal because of her childhood habits. If Su Peijian didn't come home, she would just eat something. Su Peijian didn't stop him. She walked to the sofa and sat down. She closed her eyes and rubbed her forehead. She was actually a little annoyed. Ling Jing's recent performance had affected her originally calm heart. That kind of fluctuation was something she didn't need. A gigolo, to put it bluntly, was like a male pet. No matter how good and considerate this gigolo was to her, it was just his duty. After all, she had paid for all of this. But when she saw Ling Jing's purely flattering face, and those eyes full of emotion, she actually felt a trace of guilt. She even had the mentality that if she didn't respond to him, she would be guilty. This kind of feeling was really bad, and it was also very life-threatening. Therefore, after Ling Jing gently flattered her for nearly a week, she finally decided to calm herself down first. Leaving Ling Jing, and not seeing the disappointment and expectation in his eyes, she could seriously think about how to end this relationship. "Do you have a lot to do at the company? Why do I think you look very tired? How are you feeling? Are you okay? You don't let me see you when you're sick, and you don't come back to let me take care of you. Child, you really make people worry too much." "Mom, I'm fine." Su Peijian heard Xiang Kaiping come out and quickly sat up straight. "It's just a minor illness. I've always been very healthy. I've been fine for a long time. Why do I need you to take care of me?" Her daughter was being polite to her, and Xiang Kaiping didn't know what to do to make her daughter not be polite to her. "You haven't come back for dinner recently, and you've lost weight. When the house over there is decorated, we'll move in. I can take care of you nearby." "Okay." Su Peijian didn't object. The decoration was done quickly, and it was almost finished. However, it would take some time for the decoration to be finished. According to Su Peijian's plan, they should be able to move in the second half of the year. Xiang Kaiping glanced at her and said carefully, "But if we really move there, I'm afraid some places will be very inconvenient." "What's inconvenient?" "You and Lin Feixing." Xiang Kaiping was afraid that she would be unhappy, so her attitude was very gentle. "How are you guys? I think that child is really good. He came to see me 2 days ago. He said that he heard his mother mention it once and knew that my waist is not good, so he sent some things over." Su Qingseng had bought physical therapy equipment for her before, but Su Qingseng didn't come over much after Su Peijian came out, so she sometimes didn't insist on using it. Su Qingseng had been her daughter for a few months. Su Peijian was her biological daughter. It was normal for them to care about her. However, Lin Feixing came over to take care of her and ask about her well-being. Was it because of her, an old woman? Wasn't it because of Su Peijian? "I really think that he is very good. Of course, if you don't like him, I can't force you. But I really hope that you can think about what Mom said. No matter what, you have to give him a chance to try. Don't you think?" Su Peijian didn't say anything. Purely in terms of marriage, Lin Feixing was indeed a good choice. However, "Peijian, I know that you have a knot in your heart. But this is already the case for my entire life. I just want you to be happy. And I also hope that you can be like an ordinary woman, get married, have children, and have a small family of your own. Then live a normal life." Xiang Kaiping was afraid that she would be unhappy, so she tried to persuade her. In fact, she knew that she had no right to control Su Peijian. She also knew that she could never be as close to her as she was to Li Qianxue. However, Su Peijian was her daughter. Even if they couldn't be as close as mother and daughter, She still hoped that her daughter could live a happy life, at least better than her. Mom, I got it. Su Peijian saw the hidden worry in Xiang Saiping's eyes. She couldn't tell her that she actually had no intention of falling in love with any man. Marriage or not, having children or not, were not important to her at all. However, since Xiang Kaiping was worried about this, she would let her be for once. During the morning jog, Su Peijian bumped into Lin Feixing again. Seeing her, Lin Feixing was surprised again. Peijian, morning. The golden retriever he was holding was even happier than Lin Feixing. When it saw Su Peijian, it wanted to jump on her. Fortunately, it was still tied with the leash, so Lin Feixing held it back. I was going to look for you today. I didn't expect to meet you today. Lin Feixing looked at her with a smile. Today is the weekend. I don't work. I wonder if Peijian has any plans? How could Su Peijian not understand what Lin Feixing meant? The weather was not good today. The weather forecast said that it would rain later. She didn't plan to go out, but when she saw the anticipation in Lin Feixing's eyes, she thought of Xiang Saiping's words. In the end, she shook her head. No, I don't have any plans today. Then can you give me some of your time? Lin Feixing looked at her with a smile in his eyes. We can do something meaningful together. Something meaningful? Su Peijian blinked. She thought that Lin Feixing was talking about their first date. After thinking for a long time, she didn't reject him. Sure. What do you want to do? When she saw the door of the orphanage, she blinked. Sorry. Lin Feixing smiled a little embarrassedly. Because I already made an appointment with the director today to come and volunteer. But I really want to go on a date with you, so I had to bring you. You won't be angry, right? No. Su Peijian had never done volunteer work before. She used to serve her sisters in prison, because she was bored, and wanted to find something to do. Also, she wanted to reduce her sentence. It was her first time coming to a place like this. Then let's go in. Lin Feixing didn't come empty-handed. He had a lot of boxes in the trunk. Su Peijian took the initiative to help him, and took the boxes from him. When they entered, she realized that there were food, toys, and some school supplies among the boxes. Soon children came out. Su Peijian wanted to give the things to them directly, but Lin Feixing stopped her. That won't do. Lin Feixing blocked her hand. If we give it to them directly, it will give them the illusion that they are getting something for nothing. So we need them to participate in the labor with us in order to get the prizes. Su Peijian didn't say anything. In the past, whether it was the Li Corporation or other companies in Lin City, doing charity was more for corporate publicity. Donating a large sum of money not only improved the corporate image, but also brought benefits to the company. She never knew that there was a way to do charity. In the following time, she followed Lin Feixing to the orphanage's car. Today they were going to visit a farm, and then work for the farm owner. The children were very enthusiastic, especially after knowing that they could get prizes if they did well. It was Su Peijian's first time doing something like this, so it was a little refreshing. However, when she entered the farm and saw the woolen coat she was wearing, she took it off without hesitation. She only wore a sweater skirt and worked with the children. Lin Feixing was called Brother Feixing, while she was called Sister Peijian. At her age, it was quite an interesting experience to be called Big Sister. After returning from the farm to the orphanage, Lin Feixing kept his promise and distributed the gifts to the children. All the children were very happy with the gifts. There were also gifts from the farm owner. In the afternoon, everyone made dinner with the fruits and vegetables they brought back from the farm. Su Peijian looked at the children who were obviously orphans, but they could still smile happily. She felt a little envious. Children's things were that simple and direct. They were happy to receive gifts, and they were happy to go out and play. Chapter 847. Just like her, for her, happiness had become a relatively luxurious thing. Apart from them, there were other volunteers who came to work that day. After dinner, they told the children to tell stories and play games. Su Peijian didn't realize that she had stayed in the orphanage for the whole day until the director said that all the children had to go to bed. It was already late at night when she came out of the orphanage. Su Peijian didn't feel tired after getting into Lin Feixing's car. Instead, she felt excited. I'm in luck today. Lin Feixing followed her into the car and glanced at her. Look, the weather forecast said it would rain, but it didn't. The event went well. Yes. Su Peijian nodded. She was indeed in luck today. Although the event had to go on in the rain, it would still affect people's mood. Peijian, do you feel bored today? No. Su Peijian didn't understand why he would have such a thought. I think it's good and meaningful. Really? Lin Feixing smiled. He looked less shrewd and more sincere. Today was our first date. I was supposed to take you shopping, to a movie, or to a French restaurant. But I made an appointment with the director, so it really doesn't matter. Su Peijian interrupted him. It's good today. Thank you. Lin Feixing looked at the traffic light and stopped the car. He turned to look at her with a serious expression. Sorry, I don't have much experience in pursuing girls. If you think I did something wrong, you must tell me. You don't have to do that. Su Peijian was afraid that he wouldn't believe her, so she added, I'm really not angry. I think it's good this way. I've never done something like this before. It's a rare experience for me. That's good. Why did you think of volunteering? I studied in the United States. Our school gives students additional credits every year, and one of them is social service. At first, I only did these things for the credits. But later, I realized that doing these things could make people happy. Pure happiness. So when I returned to China, I tried to contact a local volunteer organization. They organize these events regularly. I think it's very meaningful. I signed up. Su Peijian nodded and looked at Lin Feixing with admiration. You are a good man. Thank you. When the signal light changed again, Lin Feixing stepped on the accelerator. I don't want that reputation of being a good person. Instead, after he started helping people, he realized that such simple happiness was much simpler than making money in the business world. That's why I tried to keep doing it. Su Peijian nodded. She looked at Lin Feixing's profile and suddenly said, Next time there's an event like this, you can call me again. I'd be happy to come. Sure. Lin Feixing nodded. His eyes lit up. Not next week. If there's an event like this next time, I'll definitely invite you. Then it's a deal. Yes. Su Peijian didn't object. Such pure happiness was rare for her. She couldn't help but glance at Lin Feixing. This man was quite interesting. He had shattered her preconceived notions several times. Just because he was a traditional person, he was able to accept things that others couldn't. She had thought that he was a shrewd businessman, but he was able to bring her to do volunteer work. He was a caring person, so his character shouldn't be too bad. Su Peijian thought that maybe she could really listen to Xiang Kaiping and give Lin Feixing a chance. It could also be considered as giving herself a chance, because she had decided to give Lin Feixing a chance. Then her relationship with Ling Jing would probably be broken. Thinking of Ling Jing's face, Su Peijian hesitated for a moment. I just want to please you and make you happy. Can't I do that? Because I realized that I like you. I really like you. Su Peijian calmed herself down and shook Ling Jing's face out of her mind. He was just a pretty boy, a gangster. What did she mean by love? Even if there was real love, there would be schemes. How pure could the love of a man who was being kept by her be? She wouldn't believe a word of what he said. When it was time to make a decision, she would make a decision. There was no benefit in dragging it on. Their relationship was not normal. It wouldn't be a pity to end it. Yes, it wouldn't be a pity. Ling Jing leaned on Su Peijian, and his waist, which had been exerting force, suddenly stopped. He stared at Su Peijian's face condescendingly, and found that at such a time, this damn woman was actually absent-minded. He lowered his head and bit Su Peijian's shoulder. He used extreme force with a bit of ruthlessness. Su Peijian snapped back to reality and looked at the man in front of her. Are you a dog? Woman, it seems that I didn't work hard enough today. How can you be absent-minded at such a time? Ling Jing wouldn't allow his masculine charm to be so insulted. He half-hugged Su Peijian, who had been lying on her back, and changed his position. This way, the two of them were sitting opposite each other. Su Peijian let out a low cry and looked at Ling Jing's star-like eyes, slightly gritting her teeth. Have you had enough? How can I? They hadn't seen each other for a few days. It was fine if this woman didn't show up. How could she be absent-minded at such a time? This could not be tolerated. Holding her waist tightly in his arms, he bit the place where he had just bitten. Su Peijian was in pain, but she couldn't push him away. He began to pound her body with great force. Soon, her little absent-mindedness dissipated, and there was only the wild and unrestrained, but evil and charming Ling Jing in front of her, as well as the feeling he gave her. 1 week. For a whole week, Su Peijian returned to Rome Garden after work every day. She had dinner with Ling Jing. After dinner, she taught him how to operate funds, stocks, and securities. Unfortunately, that man didn't seem to be interested. Every time she taught him, he would hug her and start to mess around. Su Peijian couldn't hate him for not making progress. She will always be in his next action, into the love that he gives. On the weekend, Ling Jing said that he wanted to go out to play, and Su Peijian didn't object. Recently, she had almost fulfilled Ling Jing's requests. Ling Jing was secretly pleased to see that Su Peijian almost never refuted his requests. He thought that his confession that day had worked. Su Peijian began to have feelings for him. She had slowly begun to fall in love with him without knowing it. This knowledge made Ling Jing very happy. Several times when Gu Xiu saw him, he thought he was hallucinating. Young Master Ling was smiling so happily. Was he really not a man in love? Instead of shopping, Su Peijian and Ling Jing chose a daytime time to visit the Science and Technology Museum. Last time, Ling Jing took her to see the stars at night. She thought that as a man, he might be interested in this aspect. The two of them went to the Science and Technology Museum in Rome City and happened to meet a student from an elementary school in Rome City who was visiting today. The two adults looked particularly conspicuous among the group of children. Su Peijian felt a little uncomfortable. If she had known, she would have come on another day. However, Ling Jing didn't feel this way. No matter where he was, he looked wild and unrestrained. Even if he was stared at by many people, he could still be calm and at ease, as if he was at his own home. What's wrong? Do you feel uncomfortable being stared at by the children? The two adults, squeezed in the middle of a group of children, didn't look like teachers. Ling Jing raised the corners of his lips and moved closer to Su Peijian's ear with a playful smile. TSK, do you want me to make them not dare to stare at us? What are you doing? Don't mess around. Su Peijian glared at him. This person never played by the rules. Seeing that Ling Jing was about to move closer to kiss her, Su Peijian quickly avoided him. Stop it, they are all children. Don't teach them bad things. Tisk. Ling Jing stopped kissing her and suddenly moved closer to her face. So caring? Why? Do you want to have your own child? Boring. Su Peijian didn't look at him and walked past him. The two of them avoided the children in the hall and walked to the branch inside. That way they missed the children. In the past few years, China's science and technology had developed quite well, and the construction of the Science and Technology Museum was very unprecedented. Su Peijian walked inside, and Ling Jing held her hand. Su Peijian had seen some of the technology in the media, and some she hadn't. At first, she just wanted to go on a date with Ling Jing. But when she really came in, she was interested. She thought of the children in the orphanage. For those children, they might not have visited such a venue. If it was possible, she could bring those children here next time. If she really wanted to come, she had to tell the orphanage. She also had to arrange for the Science and Technology Museum. Su Peijian was thinking about it in her heart, but her wrist suddenly tightened. Then, she was quickly pulled into someone's arms. The sudden change made her look up and find that Ling Jing was holding her tightly in his arms, and at the same time, he was staring at her unhappily. Don't you look where you are walking? Su Peijian was stunned for a moment. She looked back and found that there was a step in front of her. She didn't pay attention just now and almost stepped on it. What are you thinking about? Ling Jing found that she had been distracted a lot these days. Nothing. It was indeed rare for her to find happiness again after she came out of prison. Last time, she helped to do volunteer work and simply got along with the children. To her, it was very interesting and meaningful. She wasn't watching Lin Feixing do it, but she realized that there were some things she could do. Be careful. Ling Jing glared at him fiercely. Su Peijian looked up at him. Although he was fierce, there was a hint of concern in his eyes. her lips slightly pressed into a straight line. Su Peijian gently broke away from his hand, turned around, and continued to walk forward. Ling Jing looked at her profile, quickly caught up with her, and reached out to hold her hand. Su Peijian tried to break free, but she didn't succeed. In the end, she let him be. This silent indulgence made the smile on Ling Jing's face even brighter. He looked at Su Peijian and knew that this woman was about to fall into his arms. As for falling in love with him, wasn't that a matter of time? It was already noon when the two of them came out of the Science and Technology Museum. It was very far from the city, and there weren't many high-end restaurants. Ling Jing looked around and took out his phone app to search. There's a farmhouse nearby. Do you want to go there? Farmhouse. Su Peijian frowned slightly, but Ling Jing didn't give her a chance to regret. He took her to the car and went directly to the place he said. It really was a farmhouse. It was a small courtyard, and the rooms inside had been changed into private rooms. There were 3 floors in total, and the rooms on each floor had a nickname. The names were a little tacky, such as Blooming Flowers, Wealth, and Happiness. Seeing this, Su Peijian wanted to back out. However, Ling Jing was very interested. He took Su Peijian to a private room on the 2nd floor, called Blooming Flowers and Growing Stalks. Looking at the 4 words, Ling Jing raised his eyebrows and looked at her with a playful expression. Are we considered to be blooming flowers and growing stalks? Su Peijian ignored him. She wasn't picky now. If he wanted to eat, she would accompany him. To Su Peijian's surprise, the environment inside was actually good. It was very clean, and although the decoration was a little tacky, the layout was reasonable. The boss entered the door and told them what the main ingredients and special dishes were today. He said that they had wild animals like rabbits and pheasants here. After hearing the boss mention a certain ingredient, Ling Jing clicked his tongue. Let's have dragon and phoenix soup. He turned to look at Su Peijian. You should have eaten it before, right? But I think it should be different in this kind of place. Su Peijian knew what dragon and phoenix soup was. The Li family's diet was light, and she didn't eat everything. Seeing that Ling Jing was so interested, she didn't refute again. The pride and certainty in Ling Jing's eyes deepened. Because it was the weekend, there were many people in the farmhouse, and the private room next door was a little noisy. The soundproofing here was not very good. Su Peijian frowned slightly, but in the end she endured it. Ling Jing seemed to know what she was thinking. He sat down next to her and put one hand around her waist. Never been to this kind of place? Bear with it. I've actually never been here either. Su Peijian glanced at him, obviously not believing him. Ling Jing was not satisfied with her suspicious look, so he leaned over and kissed her on the cheek. What's with that look? I said I've never been here, so I've never been here. Don't touch me. Although the door of the private room was closed, it was not locked. Who knew if someone would come? I didn't touch you. I moved my mouth. Ling Jing was addicted to teasing her and wanted to kiss her face again. Su Peijian was annoyed. She didn't like to do these intimate actions outside. Are you going to let go or not? Don't be so serious. You're always so serious. How boring life is. Ling Jing pressed her face against hers. To be a man is to have fun while you can, isn't it? Su Peijian reached out to push him, and there were footsteps outside. Ling Jing didn't go too far. He let go of her when he heard the sound. When he let go, he didn't forget to tease her again. Woman, go back and continue. Su Peijian ignored this and pretended not to hear it. If she argued with a hooligan like Ling Jing, she would be the one who would be angry in the end. The dishes were served, and Ling Jing served her a bowl of soup very attentively. Try it. This is the best for you women. It's a great tonic. The first part of the sentence sounded okay, but the second part sounded strange. Su Peijian couldn't help but look at Ling Jing. He spread his hands. Did I say something wrong? You have to know that your physical strength is really poor. Seeing Su Peijian frown, he lowered his voice a little. You see, every time I don't arrive, you can't do it. If this isn't poor physical strength, what is it? Su Peijian couldn't listen to it anymore. The education she had received since she was a child made it impossible for her to make such a lewd joke like other women. She was so serious, but Ling Jing wasn't annoyed. Drink more. Su Peijian ignored him and picked up the soup to taste. Surprisingly, the taste was actually not bad. Ling Jing had been looking at her the whole time. The look in his eyes was somewhat sharp, like a cheetah looking at its prey. Su Peijian turned a blind eye to his gaze. There was only so much time left. Now no matter what Ling Jing wanted to do or what he wanted, it was only for this period of time. When the time was up, this relationship would end. Su Peijian thought very well. In fact, in the following period of time, Lin Feixing happened to be busy and went on 2 business trips. This also gave her time to accompany Ling Jing and end their relationship. 2 weeks later, Lin Feixing returned from his business trip. The first thing he did was to call her and ask her out. When she received Lin Feixing's call, Su Peijian had just woken up. She was in the kitchen making breakfast for herself. Ling Jing had already woken up and was washing up in the bathroom. Su Peijian hung up the phone and looked at the toast in the oven in a daze. But only for a moment. Soon she continued what her hands were doing. Today was the day to end everything. When Ling Jing came out, Su Peijian had already made 2 breakfasts and placed one in front of Ling Jing. Thank you. Ling Jing smiled very brightly. The weather had warmed up a lot. He casually put on a casual t-shirt. Because he had just washed his face, a few strands of hair on his forehead were slightly damp and hung down slightly messily, adding a bit of an unruly feeling to him. When he smiled, his pair of almond-shaped eyes would rise up, with a little smile in his eyes, looking evil and charming. Su Peijian lowered her eyes and ate quietly. She had already started to organize the words in her mind. It's very delicious. In fact, it was just a simple sandwich, but Ling Jing ate it like a Manchu Han imperial feast. Woman, your cooking is getting better and better. This kind of breakfast could be praised like this by him. It was really. Su Peijian glanced at him, picked up the milk in front of her, and drank it in one gulp. She took out a tissue and gently wiped the corner of her mouth. When she put down the tissue, Su Peijian had already prepared it. Ling Jing. Yes, thank you for all this time. Woman, did you suddenly realize that I am a very good lover? Yes. Su Peijian did not deny this. No matter what the purpose of Ling Jing's kindness and gentleness towards her was, he was indeed a perfect lover. You are a very good lover. Ling Jing's performance in the past half a month flashed through her mind, as well as Ling Jing's performance when she was sick. The way he smiled, the way he was moved, and the way he said he liked her. Chapter 848. The dining room was very quiet, and the aroma of food still floated in the air. The smile on Ling Jing's face froze. He looked at Su Peijian, and only realized what she was talking about after a few seconds. Woman, what are you talking about? He gritted his teeth slightly. I said let's end it. As Su Peijian spoke, she took out the card she had prepared for a long time from her pocket, and pushed it in front of Ling Jing. There are 2 million in this. 1 million is what we agreed on. And 1 million is the money I promised to invest for you. The golden card was placed in front of Ling Jing. He looked at the card, and then at Su Peijian in front of him. The other party's calm tone almost made him want to go berserk. Woman, this isn't what we agreed on before. Ling Jing's fists unconsciously clenched. Didn't you say that you want me to accompany you for half a year? It was only 3 months now, and there was still a long time in between. Yes, I said so before. But I'm tired now. Tired? Ling Jing narrowed his eyes with a storm in his eyes. You said you're tired? Yes. Su Peijian nodded. I'm tired. So let's end it. It wasn't a discussion or a question. There wasn't even an explanation. Su Peijian unilaterally ended this relationship. Woman, I'll give you a chance to reorganize your words. There was a hint of anger in his low voice. Anyone who knew Ling Jing knew that he was on the verge of losing his temper. I'm tired. Let's end it. Su Peijian stood up and looked at the card. You should be happy that you got the reward you deserve in a shorter time. So I don't think you have anything to be angry about. Ling Jing didn't say anything. He just stared at Su Peijian. His heart was experiencing a storm. The Su Peijian in front of him made him have a moment of impulse to tear her apart. Many ruthless and dark thoughts surged out uncontrollably at this moment. As the young master of the Ling family, even if there were 5 brothers above him, none of them could shake his position. Who knew how many people outside would be afraid when they heard his name? The damn woman in front of him first treated him as a little gangster, a gigolo to support him. Then, she took advantage of him a few more times, treating him like a male pet and ignoring him. Now it was even more powerful. It could come and go as it pleased. Good, very good. After all, he was the young master of the Ling family. The angrier he was, the calmer his expression was. His thoughts changed almost instantaneously. He wanted to grind Su Peijian's bones into ashes and make this woman beg him one day. He wanted to conquer this woman and make her beg for mercy. Several thoughts flashed through his mind, but his eyes never left Su Peijian. He stared at Su Peijian in a daze. His expression was one of shock, astonishment, and disbelief. The last thing that came to mind was that he was injured. He stared at Su Peijian with his clear and seductive almond-shaped eyes. He didn't say a word. In fact, his silence was more effective than his words. Su Peijian was used to being cold-hearted. She was also prepared that Ling Jing would make a noise and even quarrel with her. She had even thought of a countermeasure. However, Ling Jing's performance in front of her was completely out of her imagination. She suddenly felt a rare sense of guilt. But even though she felt guilty, she would not change her mind again. She stood up and pushed the card closer to Ling Jing. If you don't have a place to live in this house, you can stay here for the time being. You can move when you find a place. But I won't come back again. After saying this, she was about to go back to her room to change her clothes and go out. Her wrist tightened, and she turned her head to look at Ling Jing. He was also looking at her. His gaze was full of hurt. Don't you have any meaning to us during this period of time? As he spoke, he stood up, grabbed her wrist, and trapped her between his body and the dining table. He lowered his head, and his almond-shaped eyes, which had always been bright, were now full of hurt. What do my feelings and feelings mean to you? It wasn't a question, but an extremely sad question. Su Peijian didn't dare to look at him for a moment. Ling Jing, don't be like this. It's useless. How can it be useless? Ling Jing reached out and pointed at her heart. I like you. I'm serious about liking you. But I don't like you. Su Peijian finally looked at him. There was no expression or reaction in her slightly cold eyes. Su Peijian, I don't like you. I didn't like you in the past. I don't like you now. And I probably won't like you in the future. Why? Was he not handsome? Or was he not good enough to her? This was the first time he had been so calculative for this woman. Yes, although it was calculative, his kindness to her was real. When did he, the dignified young Master Ling, care for a woman? When did he care for a woman's feelings? Damn woman. It really made people want to beat her up. There is no why. Su Peijian's expression was cold. If I don't like you, I don't like you. If I don't love you, I don't love you. Why do you care so much? Good. What a good reason. Ling Jing narrowed his eyes. He was still trying to control himself. He suddenly reached out and pulled Su Peijian into his arms. He hugged her so tightly that it was as if he was trying to fuse her body into his. But I like you, Su Peijian. I like you. I really like you. I don't want you to respond. I also said that I don't even need your response. I just want to spend more time with you, can't I? Even so, can't I? You're the one who said 6 months. But now you're breaking the contract. Su Peijian, do you have to do this to me? His huge anger made his body tremble. Su Peijian felt his trembling. She frowned slightly. She raised her hand behind Ling Jing's back, but in the end, she put it down and gently pushed him away. Ling Jing hugged her tightly, not giving her a chance at all. Su Peijian took a deep breath. Ling Jing, let go of me. It's meaningless for you to do this. I don't want to let go. Ling Jing hugged her waist tightly and refused to let go. Ling Jing, let go of me. Su Peijian stubbornly pushed Ling Jing away, this time with more force than before. It also made her succeed. She took a step to the side and looked at him expressionlessly. Ling Jing, leave everyone some dignity. Let's end it like this. After saying this, she didn't look at Ling Jing anymore. She turned around and entered the room. Chapter 849. What happened? Lin Feixing looked at Su Peijian, who was in front of him, and found that she seemed to be distracted. Is the food not to your liking? This restaurant is very classy, as a second date for two people. It took Lin Feishing a long time to decide on this location. It was also very close to Su Peijian's company. It happened to be in the downtown business district. After dinner, we can go watch a movie together or something. Lin Feishing had already made up his mind, but in the middle of the meal, he realized that Su Peijian was daydreaming. Su Peijian glanced at Lin Feishing and shook her head gently. Sorry, I just thought of something. The food was good. It suits my taste. You're considerate. She remembered that when she changed her clothes and was about to go out in the morning, Ling Jing still maintained that posture in the dining room. His head was lowered. She couldn't see his expression clearly, but she could feel the low pressure around Ling Jing. She didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. The transaction was settled. Ling Jing did not suffer any losses. After all, she had given him the money. Moreover, they had agreed from the start, so she didn't think that she had done anything wrong. Su Peijian couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable when she thought about how sad Ling Jing was, and how he was trembling when he hugged her. When she met Lin Feishing's gaze, she smiled. Thank you, I like it very much. Since the decision was made, there was no need to hesitate. If one does not act decisively, one will fall into chaos. Peijian, how about we go to the movies after dinner? After saying this, Lin Feishing smiled awkwardly. Sorry, I still don't know what you like, so I can only say this. If you have other plans, I can go with you to do what you like. It's okay. Let's just watch the movie. Su Peijian didn't mind. She smiled at Lin Feishing and took out her phone to book a ticket. She looks down and concentrates on eating the food in front of her, but Ling Jing's face flashes in her mind again. He said that he would take her to the movies and let her accompany him. But in the end, that guy fell asleep in the cinema. She tightened her grip on the chopsticks and closed her eyes. This was the last time he thought of Ling Jing. A hooligan and a pretty boy really weren't worth spending too much effort on. The atmosphere in the living room of the villa was extremely low, not to mention Shen Lefu, who was standing next to the coffee table, who was too scared to speak. The bodyguards on both sides were silent. Even Gu Xiu, who had always been close to Ling Jing, did not dare to make a sound. Ling Jing looked at the information in front of her. The information was very detailed. After all, his request to the ancient cultivators back then was to investigate everything, no matter how big or small. The ancient cultivator actually did listen to him. The information in his hands couldn't be any more detailed. That woman had broken up with him 3 days ago. Then he turned around and went on a date with Lin Feishing, who looked more like a gigolo than him. Flying star? Stars. Hee hee. The necklace was a gift from Lin Feishing. Do you like stars? Ling Jing's knuckles turned white as she held the documents in her hand. A trace of bloodlust flashed across his eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He raised his head and looked at Gu Xiu. His expression was unexpectedly calm. Check if there are any people or companies that are cooperating with Zhenjin department store. Check all of them. I want to see it in 3 hours. Yes. Gu Xiu didn't understand why his young lord was acting so crazy. But young master had orders. As a subordinate, he could only obey. It didn't need 3 hours. It was such a simple matter. 2 hours later, Gu Xiu once again put a new investigation information in front of Ling Jing. He was hugging Shen Lefu. He was eating the grapes that she had peeled and fed to his mouth. Shen Lefu was respectful and afraid of him, carefully trying to please him. Her eyes were a little pleading. Young Master Ling, I can promise you anything. Can you let my brother go? My brother's body really can't take it anymore. Really? What? Ling Jing lifted her chin. His expression was light and slutty. You just fed me a few grapes. And you want me to let your brother go? Young Master Ling? Ling Jing looked at Gu Xiu, who was standing on the side, reached out and rubbed her chest. If you want me to let your brother go, it depends on how much you can do. Shen Lefu bit her lip. She was no longer an ignorant little girl. Especially after coming here for these days. She saw with her own eyes how Ling Jing treated traitors. Her little face was pale, and she looked delicate and pitiful. Ling Jing, however, was not in the mood to look at her, and pushed her away. He stood up and looked at her with some pity. If you want to get something, you have to pay. Think about it carefully. Anyway, your brother won't die for a while. His extremely cold tone made Shun Lefyu's face turn pale again. Ling Jing was not in the mood to appreciate it. He stood up and took the information in Gu Xiu's hand. The department store that Xiang Kaiping left to Su Peijian was originally called Qing Qing Department Store. After Su Peijian took over, Xiang Kaiping took the initiative to change the name to Xinjiang Department Store. TSK. No matter which name it was, the name was extremely tacky. She despised it in her heart. Thinking of the ruthlessness in Su Peijian's eyes that day, Ling Jing once again had the urge to kill. After calming down, he felt that this game could be played again. After going through all the relationships, he finally glanced at Gu Xiu. Gu Xiu felt a bit scared under her gaze, and his body shrank back a little. Young master? Ling Jing randomly took out 2 pieces of information in his hand and turned to Gu Xiu. By these 2 companies. Gu Xiu glanced at such a small company. Young Master Ling, is it necessary? When he met Ling Jing's almost murderous gaze, he took the information in her hand. Yes, I'll do it right away. You have 3 days to get this done. And, Ling Jing narrowed her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking, but there was a flash of bloodthirst in her eyes. Buy me a house. 1 bedroom and 1 living room. The older one, the smaller one. The price should be less than 2 million. Young Master Ling? He already had enough houses under his name. What the hell was 1 bedroom and 1 living room? It was not even enough for the nanny at home. Go quickly. I'll give you a week to do all the things I just told you. Yes. Gu Xiu never questioned Ling Jing's decision. He bowed and turned to leave. Ling Jing threw the information in front of her aside. Her eyes were like a cheetah waiting for an opportunity in the dark. Woman, I spent so much time and so much money to play with you. You should really be touched and honored. It was not too late to taste the fruit of victory, as long as there was that day. And he almost couldn't wait. Su Peijian looked at the form in front of her, raised her eyebrows, and looked at Manager Wang in front of her. Well, it was a coincidence that the company had a new purchasing manager, still surnamed Wang. However, he was younger than the previous one, in his 30s. He was quite capable, but sometimes he was a little indecisive. What does this report mean? The 2 downstream companies that had been working with suddenly wanted to raise the price. Business was not doing well now. For these downstream companies, it was rare for them to suddenly adjust the price without any major changes. These 2 companies were the ones that they had been working with a lot recently. Last month, they even helped to do a promotion together, and the response was good. Unexpectedly, they wanted to adjust the price now? According to this ratio, not only would their profits fall even lower, but it would also affect their perception in the hearts of customers. Mr. Su, those 2 companies seem to have just changed bosses. Then they said that the price adjustment was the new boss's idea. Change of boss. Su Peijian frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, she knocked on the table and looked at Zhou Mei. Help me make an appointment with the people in charge of these 2 companies. Yes. Zhou Mei nodded and turned to contact them. Su Peijian did not take this matter to heart. The new boss did not know the industry, so it was normal for him to want to adjust the price. She made an appointment to see if they could negotiate. If they could, they would. If not, she did not mind changing to another company. Business was difficult now. If she wanted to cooperate, the company had to agree. She did not like people threatening her. 2 days later, Su Peijian met one of the people in charge of a private restaurant. The man looked to be in his 40s. His figure was well managed, but he was a little chubby and had a small belly. He looked friendly when he smiled, but the look in his eyes was different. Su Peijian quickly guessed what kind of negotiation tactics he would use later from the man's appearance and the way he spoke. The man's surname was Ying, and his name was Ying Tianlong. The first thing he did was to introduce himself. He said that he was originally a nouveau riche. After buying and making money, he did not know what he was doing. People said that there were risks in real estate and the stock market, but he wanted to do business. He bought this company with the intention of making money, so it was necessary to raise the price. The man's words were not very technical. His whole person revealed that although he was unsophisticated, he was rich. He felt that he was willful because he was rich. There was no such person in the circle that Su Peijian had interacted with before. This was a rare experience for her. The man did not come alone. He brought a female secretary with him. She said that she was a secretary, but her words were coquettish and seductive. She leaned against Ying Tianlong as if she had no bones. She looked at Zhou Mei beside her, and was glad that Zhou Mei was not like this. Otherwise, she would let Zhou Mei go home and eat her up. Zhou Mei seemed to know what she meant and smiled at her. It was obvious that the person in front of her was relatively simple. Su Peijian did not want to beat around the bush. President Ying, I understand that you want to make money after buying the company, but everything has to be reasonable. We signed a contract before. If you suddenly change your mind like this, it will be considered a breach of contract. What breach of contract? Don't scare me. The person who signed the contract with you is the person from the previous company, not me. Besides, our contract expires in a month. It's natural for me to raise the price. Su Peijian listened to the other party say the same thing and lost her patience, right? Okay, President Ying, you mean that you have to raise the price, and you don't intend to take back the idea, right? That's for sure. As Ying Tianlong spoke, his phone rang. The secretary stood up. President Ying, I'm going to take the call. Go. Come back early. Ying Tianlong touched the secretary's waist in front of Su Peijian. Su Peijian could not bear it, and turned her face away. The secretary twisted her waist and left. Not long after, Zhou Mei's phone also rang. What was wrong with these people today? She glanced at Zhou Mei and picked up the phone awkwardly. I'm sorry, President Su. It's okay. Su Peijian did not like to be interrupted when talking about business. Zhou Mei stood up to answer the phone. Su Peijian wanted to continue, but Zhou Mei rushed in again. She approached Su Peijian, and her voice was trembling. President Su, my child suddenly fell. I want to go to the hospital now. Su Peijian saw the anxious look on her face, and did not make things difficult. Go. But here. It's okay. The child is more important. She was not an unreasonable person. Moreover, she had a hunch that the negotiation would probably not go through today. Therefore, she did not plan to stay long. After confirming Ying Tianlong's thoughts, she would leave. Zhou Mei looked at her gratefully, and then left in a hurry. Ying Tianlong's secretary had not returned yet. Only the two of them were left in the private room. Su Peijian looked at him again with a calm expression. President Ying, a straightforward person does not resort to insinuations. I am a straightforward person. I just want to ask, are you sure there is no room for negotiation? President Su, don't be so serious. It's not that there is no room for negotiation. Ying Tianlong glanced at Su Peijian. Of course. I have to give you face when such a beautiful lady comes to talk about cooperation with me. How about this, you drink with me, and I won't raise the price. How about that? Hearing this, Su Peijian did not want to talk at all. In that case, there is nothing to talk about. The two companies cooperated on an equal footing. She was not an escort. Many years ago, Su Qinghui had taught her that one must not be arrogant, but one must have pride. When it came to cooperation, it would work out. If it didn't work out, she did not want to continue. Unexpectedly, when she wanted to leave, the other party grabbed her hand and pulled her into his arms. President Su, you are really beautiful. You even outshine my secretary. Actually, you are such a beautiful lady. Why do you have to work so hard to talk about business? What are you doing? Let go. Su Peijian's eyes were cold and fierce. Ying Tianlong fearlessly leaned over. Don't shout so loudly. Let me tell you. As long as you are willing to work with me, don't mention lowering the price. I will even give it to you for free. President Ying, I will say it again, let go. Su Peijian tried to push him, but he was a man after all, and he was quite strong. He hugged her and refused to let go. His hands were still touching her back. I have never played with a beauty like President Su. You have personality, I like it. President Su, you are with me. Seeing that he was about to kiss her, Su Peijian raised her hand and slapped his face without thinking. Ying Tianlong was slapped by her and was instantly furious. He hugged her tightly and refused to let go. B***tch, I gave you face, but you don't want it. Let me tell you, It's your fortune that I like you. Be good to me or else. With the other party's size and strength, Su Peijian struggled, but it was very difficult. She kicked and kicked, using the self-defense skills she had learned before. Ng Tianlong didn't succeed so easily. He took a few hits and didn't gain any advantage, but he was also angry because of this. He became even crazier and pressed Su Peijian onto the chair. He reached out to tear her clothes. The strength of a man and a woman showed a huge difference at this time. When the other party's hand reached for the collar of her clothes, Su Peijian finally couldn't help but feel a trace of panic. B***TCH, I will teach you a good lesson. I will let you know how powerful I am. Su Peijian reached out to take the phone in her pocket, but before she could get it, a few buttons on her shirt had been torn off by the other party. Help! Su Peijian didn't have time to get the phone, so she screamed in despair. She hoped that someone outside the room could hear her cry for help. The man's hand was already touching her collarbone. Su Peijian was so disgusted that she wanted to vomit. In the next second, the gravity on her body disappeared. She didn't have time to see what was in front of her at all. She saw Ng Tianlong's somewhat fat body being lifted up and then thrown out. After the sound of landing and smashing into the chair, there was the sound of fists landing on Ng Tianlong's body. One punch after another, Ng Tianlong let out a squeal like a pig being slaughtered. Su Peijian was still in shock. She, who had escaped from danger, now saw clearly who the person was. Ling Jing? Bastard, who told you to touch my woman? Ling Jing not only punched but also kicked. After a few punches and kicks, Ng Tianlong's face became like a pig's head. In the end, when Ng Tianlong dodged, he didn't know if he hit the corner of the table or the chair, but he directly fainted. However, Ling Jing didn't think it was enough. She raised her foot and wanted to hit him again. Su Peijian stopped him. Enough! She stood up and felt the coldness in her chest. She lowered her head and tightened her shirt in the middle. She found that the button had fallen off, and there was no way to fix it. She picked up the coat beside her and put it on, covering her chest. She heard footsteps outside, and went forward to stop Ling Jing from continuing to beat him. Stop hitting him. If you continue, someone will die. Ling Jing glanced at her. When she saw her messy hair and clothes, a ruthless look appeared in her eyes again. She raised her foot and kicked Ng Tianlong a few more times. At that moment, Ng Tianlong's secretary came in and saw the situation in front of her. Su Peijian held her forehead. Ling Jing didn't care. He directly went forward to put his arm around her waist and led her outside. The secretary was so scared that her face turned pale. She didn't stop them and just watched them leave. By the time Su Peijian got into Ling Jing's Cadillac, her rationality had returned, and she calmed down. She tightened her coat and glanced at Ling Jing. The panic of almost being violated finally dissipated, and another question came to her mind. Why are you here? She was very calm. She didn't lose her usual rational analysis just because Ling Jing saved her. Ling Jing didn't answer her question. Instead, he approached her and held her shoulders with both hands. Are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? Did that beast hurt you? Su Peijian was stunned for a moment. When she saw the pure concern in Ling Jing's eyes, she spoke again. I'm fine. You didn't say anything. Why are you here? Ling Jing's expression was a little embarrassed, and a little uncomfortable. He retracted his hand, as if he didn't know how to answer this question. Su Peijian looked at him and suddenly realized something. It had been a month since she unilaterally announced that the two of them were over. In this month, she did not think about Ling Jing, but she suppressed it. In fear of meeting Ling Jing, she didn't even return to Rome Garden once in this month. Now that she saw Ling Jing again, she realized that something had happened to her. But Ling Jing could immediately appear. What did this mean? Yes. I followed you. Ling Jing openly admitted what he had done. Su Peijian didn't expect him to say that. She was stunned. I followed you. Ling Jing spoke again. This time, he looked even more embarrassed. I can't forget you. He didn't look into Su Peijian's eyes. Instead, he slightly turned his face to look at an unknown point. Even if you don't want me, I can't forget you. You breached the contract. You clearly said that it would be half a year. But you abandoned me in advance. But I can't forget you. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Su Peijian. I miss you very much. The car wasn't big, and only the light from the street lamps outside shone in. It was dim and hazy. The young man with the devilish appearance was like a little boy who had his first awakening of love. He looked at her with a very sincere and devout gaze, and told her that he liked her. The throbbing that Su Peijian had deliberately suppressed in the deepest part of her heart seemed to show signs of revival at this time. Su Peijian pursed her lips into a straight line. She didn't like this idea. Ling Jing, I said that we're over. Yes, we're over. Ling Jing looked at her with a bitter face. I know that I don't deserve you. I also know that you won't like me. But how can people control things in love? Su Peijian didn't speak. She had never really fallen in love with someone. She didn't know that kind of feeling. At first, she got engaged to Qiu Yanba because their family conditions were similar and their identities were suitable. Later, she got engaged to Hu Yifan because they used each other and exchanged interests. After she got out of prison, her mentality was no longer the same as before. What was love to her? She didn't know what it felt like to love someone. She used to have a family that she loved dearly, but later she realized that those family members didn't belong to her. She lost her family and almost gave up everything in the first half of her life. Now, there was a person who looked into her eyes and made such a serious confession. She couldn't tell what she felt in her heart and didn't know how to respond. In the end, she could only turn her face away. She didn't speak, and Ling Jing directly started the car. Su Peijian sat there and didn't speak. Soon, she realized that this wasn't the way to Rome Garden. She glanced at Ling Jing, but didn't ask where he planned to take her. The car soon stopped in a relatively old neighborhood. Ling Jing got out of the car and glanced at her. His eyes were a little perturbed, a little uneasy, and a little uncertain. Su Peijian met his eyes, pursed her lips and got out of the car. There was almost no parking space in the neighborhood, so the car had to be parked outside. They walked into the neighborhood for a while. The shabby neighborhood had a few sparse trees, which could be considered greenery. They walked around a flower bed that didn't look beautiful, and Ling Jing took her into the door of one of the buildings. The iron door was a little old. After entering the door, she found that not only was it old, but there was also no elevator. The two of them went upstairs together. Su Peijian was wearing high heels and stepping on the stairs. The sound of her footsteps sounded very loud in the dark. She couldn't help but want to walk softly, but it was a little difficult. Chapter 850. The door closed behind her, and the scene in front of her was reflected in her eyes. Su Peijian hadn't seen such a small house for a long time. The design was clear at a glance, with one bedroom and one living room. On the right was a small dining table that occupied a small part of the living room. On the left was a sofa that looked a little old, but fortunately it was clean. The coffee table was a little old-fashioned, with a box of tissues and a few magazines on it. The bathroom and the room were visible at a glance. Su Peijian had never been to such a place. When she was in the Li family, her bathroom was already this big. She was looking at the environment in front of her and didn't notice the disgust in Ling Jing's eyes when he saw this place. For young Master Ling, Su Peijian's two-bedroom apartment was already small and uncomfortable. This one bedroom and one living room was even more unbearable for him. But he had no choice. The housing prices in Rome City were very high now. 2 million in the city center could only buy such a small place. He couldn't let Su Peijian suspect him, so he had to suffer. When he turned to face Su Peijian, the corners of his mouth rose as if he wanted to smile. But he restrained his smile and became a little uneasy. I bought this place with your 2 million. Su Peijian was stunned for a moment. She looked up at Ling Jing, not expecting him to really listen to her and use the money to buy a house. I did everything you asked me to do. Ling Jing stood in front of her and looked at her carefully. I also went to look for a job this month. But it's not easy for me to find a job. But don't worry, I went to interview for a warehouse keeper yesterday. The boss said he wanted me, and I can go to work in a few days. He said in a very happy tone. and looked at Su Peijian with a happy expression, like a child waiting for praise. His phoenix eyes were obviously evil, but at this time, he was as pure as a child. Su Peijian's heart felt like it was struck by an electric shock. She didn't speak, just looked at Ling Jing in silence for a long time. Peijian. Ling Jing took a step forward and held her hand with a sincere and focused expression. I listened to you. Trust me really. Her heart began to beat erratically again. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing in front of her and didn't pull her hand back. Ling Jing, this is useless. She forced herself to harden her heart, pulled her hand away, forced herself not to look at him. She couldn't let Xiang Kaiping worry anymore. Xiang Kaiping's life was full of ups and downs. She now hoped that she could find a man, start a family, get married and have children. She could not. Then how can it be useful? Tell me. Ling Jing pulled her hand again. This time, he looked much more eager than before. Tell me, how can it be useful? Tell me. I can do it. After saying this, his expression changed slightly and became somewhat embarrassed. Of course, I know that I might not be able to do what you did, but I can take it slow. You see, I'm still young. There will always be a chance, right? Su Peijian didn't know what to say. The man's palm was so warm that it was boiling hot. The Ling Jing in front of him was irresistible. She could say cold words, she could put on a cold attitude, but she could hear her own heartbeat even better. Again and again, like the beating of a drum. That was the sound of his heart beating. She didn't know who started what happened next. In a small room, the bed was not big. The two of them rolled around in a ball. His clothes were taken off one by one, and her body was measured inch by him. His wheat-colored skin was firm and strong. Her fair shoulder bones seemed to have been cut. A man and a woman. They communicated in the most primitive and simple way. There was no unnecessary nonsense, only each other's breath, each other's temperature. There was me and you and me. In a daze, Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing's enlarged face in front of her. She closed her eyes and emptied her mind. Forget it, just take it as one last indulgence. After tonight, she would get everything back on track. At dawn, Su Peijian woke up from the bed and found that Ling Jing was still asleep. She stared at his sleeping face for a long time, then finally closed her eyes, got out of bed, and put on her clothes again. The buttons on her shirt had been torn yesterday. She couldn't wear it back. Looking at Ling Jing, who was still sleeping, she walked to his wardrobe, trying to find one of his clothes to put on first. However, she saw a few pieces of clothes she had left in Rome Garden. Those clothes were all hers, and she had worn them before. She stood in front of the small wardrobe and was a little dazed for a moment. Ling Jing woke up at this time, walked behind her, and wrapped his arms around her. Sorry, I was a thief. She couldn't move. The two of them had just slept with each other yesterday, and today she was treating him coldly. She could have felt no guilt, but now she felt that she had gone too far. This was a rare emotion, so she didn't break free from him. I came out when you asked me to. If you said you wanted to separate, I left. But I missed you. Ling Jing hugged her waist and pressed his chin against her neck. I went back a few times, and you didn't remove my fingerprints. I was so happy. I thought you still remembered me, but you never came back. I missed you a lot. So I became a thief and stole your clothes. That way, when you were not here, I could still see your clothes. I pretended that you were here too. His hand was pressed against her heart. Their skin touched. Su Peijian blinked, and suddenly didn't know what to say. Her body was turned by him, and he hugged her tightly and kissed her hard. Intense and crazy. After the kiss, both of their breaths were a little unstable. Su Peijian cleared her throat and said in a low voice, "Let go of me. I have to go to work." I know. Ling Jing let go and took a step back. He didn't hug her again, but looked at her with a passionate gaze. Peijian, will I see you again? Su Peijian didn't know how to respond to this. She took out a set of her own clothes from the wardrobe and put them on without avoiding Ling Jing. Peijian? Su Peijian didn't move. In fact, Ling Jing rarely called her by her name. In the past, he always liked women to call her by their names. Sometimes she would be unhappy, but now she realized that it was right that he didn't call her that way. because she didn't know how long she could hold on when he called her name in such a low voice. After putting on her clothes, she turned to face Ling Jing. He was still naked, standing there, looking at her pitifully. He looked like an abandoned animal. Once again, she felt guilty, but she suppressed the emotion. Ling Jing. She looked at him very seriously and gave him a serious suggestion. If you want to become better, you shouldn't do it for me, but for yourself. Ling Jing. You're still young. You'll meet other women in the future. You might find that I'm really not suitable for you. I won't. Ling Jing shook his head, eager to prove himself. He went forward and held her hand. I swear, I'll never meet another woman like you in my life. Really? As he spoke, the grievance on his face grew stronger. Look, I used the money to buy a house for you. I also listened to you and seriously looked for a job. Really? Peijian, believe me, I can change. I can change. Believe me. Su Peijian pulled her hand out for the last time. Okay, I'm going to work. Peijian, he called out pitifully. Su Peijian closed her eyes and left without looking back. When she went downstairs, every step of her high heels on the steps was like a light hammer, knocking on her heart. In the office, Lin Feixing looked at Su Peijian, who was sitting opposite him, and handed a document to her. Take a look at this. If there's no problem, do it like this? Okay. Su Peijian took the document and flipped it open. She was very focused when she read the document. It was as if nothing in this world could enter her eyes. Lin Feixing admired Su Peijian's delicate side profile, feeling as if he had found a treasure. There were many beautiful women, and there were also many women with personalities. However, there were not many women who were beautiful and had personalities. Not to mention, Su Peijian had a kind of calmness that women of her age did not have. That might have something to do with her experience. Ordinary people might find it disgusting, but he felt that Su Peijian was very good. Sensing his gaze, Su Peijian looked up at him, a little confused. Why are you staring at me like that? You're beautiful. After saying these 3 words, Lin Feixing laughed first. When I read Luo Shenfu, I thought Chaoji was too exaggerated. How could there be such a beautiful woman in the world? But now when I look at you, I think you're slender and beautiful. Red lips on the outside, white teeth on the inside. Bright eyes and kind eyes, these words are really appropriate. Su Peijian put down the document in her hand and smiled slightly. I thought that as a returnee, you should have forgotten Chinese culture. How is that possible? Lin Feixing laughed. My mother held me in her arms when I was 3 years old and taught me to read Tang poems. Although my parents let me study abroad, they taught me Chinese culture since I was a child. They said that one should not forget one's roots. If one can't even learn our own culture, what's the use of learning foreign culture? That makes sense. Su Peijian nodded. In some ways she did admire Lin Feixing. At first glance, he looked like a businessman. Or if she spent more time with him, she would discover the advantages of him. However, that was all. There was only appreciation for a collaborator. There was nothing else. She sighed in her heart and pushed the document back to Ling Jing. That's it. The people in your company have considered all aspects. I think there's no problem. It's not just the people in my company. You have a part in it too. Lin Feixing smiled brightly. I didn't know that although you stay in Rome City, you can analyze the international situation and the environment in England so clearly. If I didn't know better, I would think that you've been in England for a long time. I've been to England many times. As for these situations, I can actually predict their future by reading some social news. Every small detail can affect the overall situation. So you're still more capable. After Lin Feixing finished speaking, he looked at the time. It's getting late. Let's have dinner together. Sure. Su Peijian didn't refuse. She stood up and followed Lin Feixing out of the office. They went downstairs. Just as she was about to get into Lin Feixing's car, she saw from the corner of her eye a Cadillac that looked exactly like Lin Feixing's. She was stunned and stopped in her tracks. What's wrong? Lin Feixing walked forward and saw the car. He smiled. It seems that my friend was right. This car is indeed very cost-effective. Su Peijian didn't respond. She watched as Lin Feixing opened the door for her. She got into the car. The moment Lin Feixing closed the door, she turned to look across the road. The window of the Cadillac across the road had been rolled down. Ling Jing's face appeared behind the window. He looked at her with a sad expression. That man had the capital to be a demon, but he still had to show such an expression. Su Peijian's heart skipped a beat. She forced herself to look away and smiled at Lin Feixing, who had just gotten into the car. The car started and moved forward. Su Peijian saw from the rearview mirror that Ling Jing's car was also following hers. She clenched her fists tightly. Lin Feixing happened to be talking to her. She forced herself to ignore him and ignore him. However, no matter how she reminded herself, she couldn't help but look behind her. That car occasionally couldn't keep up, but it soon caught up again. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing and suddenly felt a little annoyed. What did Ling Jing mean? Did he want to take her in this way? She wouldn't. She would never be soft-hearted, nor would she be easily tempted. She and Ling Jing were not suitable for each other. How about eating Hunan cuisine? Can you eat spicy food? If not, shall we eat Japanese food? Okay. Su Peijian came back to her senses and answered absent-mindedly. Hunan cuisine is fine. I know a good Hunan restaurant. Let's go. Su Peijian didn't object. The moment she turned around, she found that Ling Jing's car had disappeared. She breathed a sigh of relief. However, when they arrived at the restaurant, she saw that car appear again. She didn't want Lin Feixing to suspect her, so she chose to look away. She entered the restaurant and chose a seat by the window. Lin Feixing asked her what she wanted to eat in a gentlemanly manner. She was about to answer when she saw Ling Jing's car appear again and stop across the road. She casually clicked on the picture on the menu and gritted her teeth. She didn't understand what Ling Jing wanted to do. Her phone rang. It was a text message notification. Lin Feixing was still ordering. Su Peijian didn't want to pay attention to him, but the text message rang again. Lin Feixing looked up at her. She had no choice but to take out her phone. Don't be with that pretty boy. Pretty boy? Who? Lin Feixing? How could he be so shameless? He was a pretty boy himself, okay? Before Su Peijian could react, she saw the second message. That pretty boy is not suitable for you. Su Peijian gritted her teeth. Before she could reply, Ling Jing sent her a second message. It's true. You can tell just by looking at his appearance. He's good-looking but useless. Can he satisfy you? Absolutely not. Bastard. Su Peijian was so angry that her face turned red. If it weren't for Lin Feixing and the waiter, she had no doubt that she would go out and beat Ling Jing up. After 2 beeps, another message came. Chapter 851. Hooligan. She looked at the words that made her uncomfortable. This time, Su Peijian didn't bother to think too much about it. She blocked the other party's number. She looked up and met Lin Feixing's confused eyes. He was looking at her calmly, and his expression seemed to be a little confused. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? No. Su Peijian shook her head. It's nothing. I'll just ignore the harassing text. Lin Feixing didn't suspect anything. Su Peijian turned her phone on silent mode and put it back in her bag. From the corner of her eye, she saw that Ling Jing's car seemed to be driving out again. She thought he was going to leave, but he gestured at her through the car window. Seeing his middle finger, Su Peijian almost couldn't hold it anymore. Fortunately, that bastard Ling Jing knew when to stop. He left after he gestured. Looking at the empty parking space, Su Peijian breathed a sigh of relief. Forget it, why bother with a hooligan like him? She couldn't lose her identity. Su Peijian ignored Ling Jing and planned to have a good meal with Lin Feixing. However, looking at Lin Feixing's gentle appearance, she couldn't help but think of Ling Jing's text just now. Crazy. Really crazy. She thought that Ling Jing was just bored, but she didn't expect to see Ling Jing's car the next day and the third day. On the 4th day, Su Peijian couldn't help it anymore. She walked straight to the Cadillac after work. She knocked on the window and Ling Jing's face appeared. Peijian. Ling Jing, that's enough. What? Do you have nothing to do? Follow me every day. Ling Jing glanced at her and looked a little disappointed. I thought you would say you missed me. Ling Jing, be serious. I'm very serious, Ling Jing said with some grievance. And I really have nothing to do. I told you last time that I found a job, but I haven't started yet. Just because you don't work doesn't mean I don't need to work. Please don't follow me. Of course I have to follow you. Ling Jing said this a little anxiously. What if you meet a pervert like last time? Where did so many perverts come from? Do you know that following me like this is not something a normal person would do? Su Peijian gritted her teeth. Do you know that I can call the police if you do this? Then you can do it. Ling Jing is very rogue, and even takes out the mobile phone to her. Do you want me to help you press the number? She couldn't continue this conversation, so she turned around and left. She had never seen a person like Ling Jing. In her past 20 years of life, she had never seen such a rogue around her. Ling Jing watched her walk away, and revealed a very strange smile behind her. Women, when I, young Master Ling, make a move, I definitely won't be empty. So don't even think about escaping. Su Peijian thought that she would see Ling Jing following her the next day, but she didn't see Ling Jing. Not only on the second day, but also on the third and fourth day. A week had passed, and she still hadn't met Ling Jing. She couldn't deny that she was a little worried. He recalled the first time he met Ling Jing. That guy was chopped down. Ling Jing, that bastard, wouldn't be walking on the old road again, right? Su Peijian reminded herself that what happened to Ling Jing had nothing to do with her. Since she was going to break it off, she had to break it off cleanly. But although she said that rationally, she couldn't think that way because of the worry in her heart. After not seeing Ling Jing for a week, she finally couldn't help it. She picked up her bag and was about to go out, but she met Lin Feixing, who happened to be looking for her. You just got off work? Then I'm just in time. Let's have dinner together. Su Peijian was stunned. When she saw Lin Feixing's smiling face, she wanted to say that she was not free, but she forced herself to harden her heart. She would just ignore that bastard. After having dinner with Lin Feixing, Su Peijian maintained perfect politeness and calmness. However, after Lin Feixing sent her home, she thought for a long time and finally released Ling Jing's number and called him. No one picked up the phone. Su Peijian frowned slightly. She sat on the sofa and looked at Rong Yuan in front of her. There were many traces left by that person here. That bastard didn't even move completely. There were still his clothes in the closet, and the CD he had watched last time was still on the coffee table. The man's ability to make money was not good, but he was very picky. He had to wear good clothes, and he had to eat food that suited his taste. Now that the man no longer lived with a woman in such a small house, for some reason, Su Peijian just had a feeling that the small apartment was incompatible with Ling Jing. With his personality and his conditions, he should be like a little prince, living in a villa. In fact, most of the time, he was really like a proud and conceited little prince. When they first met, he was extremely arrogant, but later on he changed. He was such a conceited and calm person. But in front of him, he was like a large pet. Su Peijian couldn't think about it. The more she thought about it, the more uncomfortable she felt, and the more restless she felt. She stood up and wanted to go back to her room to rest for a while. When she passed by the hallway, she saw a few post-it notes on the wall. She was stunned for a moment, went forward, and tore off the first one. Su Peijian, I like you. Su Peijian, come back. I'm leaving. Su Peijian, this is your house. I'm not living here. Come back. Su Peijian, I said I like you. Do you believe me? Su Peijian, I have nothing, but I have a heart that likes you. Will you accept me? The man's handwriting was similar to the man's appearance. The calligraphy was like a dragon and the phoenix was dancing, and the writing was sharp. Su Peijian clenched the post-it note and crumpled it into a ball. Childish, who would accept a man like this? A heart? What did she want his heart for? She shook her head and threw the paper into the trash can. After throwing it, she stood in front of the trash can for a long time. In front of her was the scene of Ling Jing looking at her carefully. She closed her eyes and stood there for a long time, lost in thought. It was dark outside, and the house was brightly lit. She clenched her hands at her sides, and finally walked back to the porch to pick up the car key. She got in the car, and went to the old house that Ling Jing had taken her to before. Su Peijian saw Ling Jing's Cadillac across the road. She knew that he was home. Without much pause, She went straight up to the third floor of the apartment. The sound of her high heels was a little loud. Just like in the past, every step felt like stepping on her heart. Sue Peijian was a little nervous. Standing in front of the door, she raised her hand to knock, but then paused. She knew in her heart what it meant once she knocked on this door. But this time she didn't hesitate anymore. She raised her hand and knocked on the door. No one came to open the door. Sue Peijian became more and more worried. Was that person not here? She took out her phone and called Ling Jing. But still no one picked up. She called again, but no one picked up. Sue Peijian waited for a few more minutes. The voice-activated lights in the corridor lit up and dimmed and brightened again. She didn't give up. After thinking about it, she called Ling Jing again. This time no one picked up. When she turned around to leave, she heard footsteps downstairs. The voice-activated lights lit up again. She turned around and saw Ling Jing appear in front of her. He stepped on the stairs, lifted the stairs, and walked up to her step by step. Sue Peijian could also see the appearance of the person in front of her clearly. At first glance, her heart trembled fiercely. Her lips moved. Sue Peijian watched him get closer and closer, but she couldn't say a word. Ling Jing looked very disheveled. He wasn't dressed in bright clothes like he had been a few days ago. His jacket was stained with some dust, and his hair was also dirty. Most importantly, he didn't look too good. When Ling Jing saw her, his eyes lit up. Then his eyes dimmed again. He took out his key to open the door, ignoring Sue Peijian. Sue Peijian looked at the gray mark on his shoulder, and her brows furrowed. When she opened the door, she smelled medicine. It was the smell of medicine for bruises. What's wrong? Where are you hurt? I'm fine. Why are you here? Ling Jing stood at the door blocking her way, not letting her in. Seeing him like this, Sue Peijian was more and more sure that he was hiding something from her. She wanted to enter the door, but Ling Jing's tall body was blocking her way, so she couldn't go in. Ling Jing, are you hurt? Where are you hurt? No, I'm fine. Ling Jing was very stubborn. He looked at Sue Peijian and said, Aren't you going to be with that pretty boy? Why are you still looking for me? His tone was full of complaint and grievance. He was a man of more than 8 meters, but now he was acting like a child. Ling Jing, are you done? I'm not. Didn't you say that you wouldn't let me follow you? So I won't follow you. Why? Is it wrong of me not to follow you now? These words were said in a fit of pique. Sue Peijian ignored what he said. Her attention was now on the smell of medicine in the room. She pushed Ling Jing away and forced her way in. On the coffee table in the living room, she saw 2 bottles of medicinal oil. She suddenly turned around and looked at Ling Jing. Are you hurt? No. Ling Jing took a step back. I'm not hurt. You're hurt. Sue Peijian took a step forward, trying to see where he was hurt. However, Ling Jing avoided her hand. Aren't you going to be with that pretty boy? Don't you want me? If that's the case, why are you still here? Ling Jing, stop it. Sue Peijian's expression was rare. Tell me, did you hurt Ru Li? I said I'm not hurt. Ling Jing said in an indifferent tone. It's just that when I was moving things, I was hit by the goods. Sue Peijian didn't expect this reason. Take off your clothes and let me have a look. Woman, what are you doing now? Ling Jing raised his eyebrows and said with a careless attitude. What? Pity me? Forget it. Although I'm not as good as you, I really don't need your pity. Sue Peijian stared at his face. In the end, without saying anything more, she stepped forward and tore off Ling Jing's clothes. Under the coat was a t-shirt, both of which were stained with dust. Sue Peijian acted as if she didn't see it. She reached for the hem of the clothes and rolled it up. Ling Jing stood there. Just now, he said nice things, but now he stood still and let her examine him. The clothes fell to the ground. Sue Peijian saw a big mark on Ling Jing's shoulder. It was estimated to be 2 days. Although the base color was red, some parts of it had begun to turn blue. Sue Peijian touched it with her hand, and Ling Jing moved his body to the side. Don't touch me. Sue Peijian didn't say anything. She watched Ling Jing walk to the broken sofa and sit down. He picked up one of the bottles of medicinal oil and was about to pour it on his shoulder. Sue Peijian stepped forward and held the bottle. What are you doing? That's not how you apply medicine. What right do you have to control me? Ling Jing, stop it. You're not a child. If you don't like me, you can leave. Su Peijian really wanted to leave, but she couldn't do it. Looking at the dust on the man's body, she couldn't stand it. You can't do this. Let's go. I'll take you to the doctor. No need. Ling Jing shook his head. It's just a hit. I won't die. As he spoke, he pointed to his chest. Look, I was stabbed here and almost died. But I didn't die, did I? When he mentioned the wound, Su Peijian remembered their first meeting. Scenes from the past few months that they had known each other kept flashing through his mind. Su Peijian was still holding the bottle of medicinal oil in her hand. She sat down next to him and was about to apply the medicine. Once again, Ling Jing avoided her hand. Ling Jing. What? Ling Jing stood up. I'm so dirty. I'm going to take a shower. Su Peijian didn't say anything. Ling Jing went into the bathroom. Soon the sound of water came from inside. Listening to the movement inside, Su Peijian knew that she should leave now. Now that Ling Jing's attitude was there, if she left now, the two of them would really be clean in the future. Soon Ling Jing came out. It was the end of spring, but this guy didn't seem to mind the cold at all. He came out bare-chested. His hair was wet, and there were water droplets dripping down his sturdy chest. They slid down to his waist, and were blocked by the thin towel. This guy was that kind of monster. He sat down on the sofa again, picked up the medicinal oil on the coffee table, and was about to pour it on his body again. Su Peijian stopped him, took the medicinal oil, and poured it on her hand. Looking at the wound on his shoulder, she gently applied the oil and rubbed it. When she touched him, Ling Jing's body shrank. Soon he stopped moving. She applied the medicine on him and looked at the big mark on it. She didn't know why, but her eyes suddenly felt a little sore. There was an indescribable emotion surging in her chest. The dust on his clothes, the wound on his shoulder, and the fatigue he revealed when he went upstairs just now. She had never lived at the bottom of society, but she had heard and seen it. She could imagine what Ling Jing had encountered in the past few days. She still remembered how arrogant Ling Jing was when they first met. There was a slight, gentle pain in her heart. After applying the medicinal oil for him, she saw that he had his back to her. She closed her eyes, put down the medicine bottle, and reached out to wrap her arms around Ling Jing's waist. Her face was pressed against his back, and the smell of the medicinal oil was a little stimulating. But she could hear Ling Jing's heartbeat through his chest. The sound, like a drum, beat on her heart. At this moment she gave up all struggle. Chapter 852. Ling Jing, let's be together. The living room was very small, but this sentence seemed to echo in the air for a long time. Ling Jing didn't turn around. He was hugged by Su Peijian from behind. Because of her words, his body froze there. After a while, he finally turned around and looked at Su Peijian. At that moment, Su Peijian saw thousands of stars in his eyes. What did you say? Say it again. Su Peijian looked at his narrow and seductive eyes. I said, let's be together. She didn't want to deny it, although Lin Feixing was very good. But she still had some feelings for Lin Feixing. But Ling Jing, she didn't know if this was love. But at least she understood that she couldn't treat Ling Jing as a pure passerby. She couldn't really watch Ling Jing disappear from her life like this. The two of them hadn't been together for many days, and it could only be considered a casual marriage. But she found that she was moved by Ling Jing. She wasn't a person who would avoid being shy. Since she was moved, she would give each other a chance. Say it again. Ling Jing's eyes became brighter and brighter. Su Peijian smiled. It was rare for her to be so indulgent. I said, let's be together. Before she could finish her sentence, Ling Jing had already kissed her. The passionate kiss was passionate and urgent. His hands were on her waist, making her fit perfectly with him. There was still the slightly pungent smell of medicinal oil at the tip of her nose. Su Peijian felt that the smell of his body after bathing was even more obvious. That poppy-like smell made her a little addicted. She had always been rational, and had never been an impulsive person. Especially when it came to feelings, she was very restrained. But now, She felt that it wasn't a bad feeling to be so impulsive. Her body was placed on the small and shabby fabric sofa. She struggled for a while. When she met Ling Jing's almost bloodshot eyes, she couldn't help but feel a little emotional, but she tried her best to hold it in. You're still injured. Don't worry, I won't die. It's my shoulder that's injured, not. The last two words disappeared from her lips. This person, when he was shameless and dirty, really had no limit. But she didn't hate it. She was even a little happy and a little happy. It wasn't bad to be able to make him lose control like this. The meaning of the word happiness was redefined. Because of Ling Jing's actions, a corner of the collapsed part of her heart was filled up. She did not resist, and allowed him to fill in part of the missing space. Or perhaps he would fill in more in the future. Ling Jing moved back to Rose Garden. His house was too small for Su Peijian. He didn't want Ling Jing to feel wronged. Rose Garden was too small for her. But at least it was better than his small rundown house. On the day of Ling Jing's return, he bought a lot of ingredients and asked Xiao Zhao to cook a table full of delicious dishes. He even opened a bottle of red wine that Su Peijian had put in the cabinet. When Su Peijian returned home, she saw a table full of fragrant dishes, and a man standing at the table with a pure smile on his face. So grand. Yes. Ling Jing smiled. To celebrate our first official day together. This should be the second day. Yesterday was only the first day. It was rare for Su Peijian to be in a joking mood, so she started joking with him. Ling Jing pulled out a chair for Su Peijian to sit. She sat opposite him and glanced at Ling Jing. He was wearing a black casual shirt and a pair of black casual pants. Black was very suitable for him. This kind of outfit made Ling Jing more seductive. Did you notice? Am I very handsome? Ling Jing returned to his cocky self. Su Peijian was a little helpless, but she didn't deny it. You do have a good face. Just good. Ling Jing was not convinced. Then what do you want to hear? Say I'm handsome. Say I'm the best in the world. You are indeed the best in the world. Su Peijian glanced at him indifferently. You have the thickest skin in the world. You're sad. Ling Jing sat back in his seat and covered his heart with one hand. Su Peijian didn't want to pay attention to him and sat down to eat. She had always been temperate. After 70% full, she stopped eating. She put down the bowl and chopsticks and looked at Ling Jing. In fact, she vaguely felt that this development was too fast. She had made such a decision on the spur of the moment. In fact, although she didn't regret it, there was always a faint uneasiness in her heart. She thought that perhaps it was the aura of a prodigal son on Ling Jing that made her feel uneasy. Ling Jing stopped eating at some point. He put down the bowl, walked to her side, and picked her up. What are you doing? We've finished the red wine and the meal. Naturally, we have to have some dessert. Su Peijian frowned. Ling Jing's indecency was something that she couldn't get used to sometimes. This man was always so frivolous and presumptuous. It was fine if it was only in front of her. But if it was in front of Xiang Kaiping, Su Peijian was shocked to realize that she had actually started to think about her future with Ling Jing. She was shocked by this thought. Her small face was a little pale. Ling Jing saw it and carried her in the direction of the room. Ling Jing, to celebrate my return. So today, you just have to feel it with your heart. You don't have to say anything. He kissed her lips hard and used all his skills to make her unable to think. Su Peijian's consciousness began to blank out. The last trace of struggle dissipated because of Ling Jing's actions. The following weekend was the weekend. Su Peijian spent 2 days with Ling Jing at Rose Garden. Ling Jing let go. No matter how much she fooled around, when it came to serious business, Su Peijian wouldn't be willful. Today was Monday. She got up early and planned to go to work. How old are you? Don't be so childish. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing, who was hugging her and refusing to let go. She couldn't continue to put on makeup with him like this. Don't apply it. Ling Jing took the foundation from her hand. You're already very beautiful. You don't need to be more beautiful. Everyone liked to hear compliments, but Su Peijian had heard too many of them. Stop fooling around. Give it back to me. I still have to go to work. She was going to meet a client today. Putting on light makeup was a form of respect for the other party. No. Ling Jing suddenly looked a little aggrieved. I don't want to go to work. I want you to accompany me. Ling Jing. Su Peijian glared at him. He withdrew his hand. She took the foundation from his hand and continued to work with her hands. Ling Jing looked at her from the side. His gaze was focused and eager. Why are you looking at me like that? Because you're beautiful. Su Peijian's movements were very fast. She quickly put on light makeup. She got up, picked up her bag, and was about to leave. From the corner of her eye, she found that Ling Jing had been staring at her. She felt a little helpless. You don't have to do that job. Why don't you come to my company? She said it tactfully, trying to make her tone sound calm. She tried not to provoke his self-esteem. No. Ling Jing refused without thinking. I don't want to. If I go to your company, do you want people to say that I rely on women? Su Peijian stopped talking and stood in front of Ling Jing. Then don't. I'll go to work. You stay at home and think about what you want to do. No matter what you want to do, I'll support you. Why? Ling Jing looked at her, and the corners of his mouth raised. Are you going to be a caring sister? If you want to call me sister, I won't object. Su Peijian remembered that she hadn't asked Ling Jing how old he was. You should be younger than me, right? Who said that? I'm definitely older than you. She was talking about age, but Ling Jing looked like he wanted to compete with her. Sometimes this man was really as childish as a child. Su Peijian didn't want to argue with him. Okay, you're older than me, so let me ask you. Can I go to work now? Give me a kiss before you go. Ling Jing approached her and hugged her waist. He hugged her and kissed her deeply. Su Peijian was a little breathless from his kiss. When he let go of her, she glared at him unhappily. You kissed off my lipstick. Just do it again. Ling Jing smiled quite casually. When he smiled, the corners of his eyes would unconsciously rise. He looked really charming. Su Peijian could feel the emptiness and numbness in her heart. That smile seemed to have been reinvigorated by someone else. This might be the feeling of being moved. She thought that she might really be in love. She was moved by a man who had no money and no power. He was obviously wrong, but she felt that everything was right. Lin Feixing sat in the office of Xinjiang department store. After discussing business with Su Peijian, he put down the documents in his hand and looked at Su Peijian. You seem to be very busy these 2 days. I'm fine. Busy? She wasn't busy. It was just that Ling Jing said something about celebrating her return and pulled her into a mess. In the past 2 days, other than calling Xiang Kaiping to tell her that she couldn't go back because she had something to do, the rest of the time, her phone was snatched by Ling Jing and turned off. I called your phone, but it was turned off. If I hadn't gone to your house to look for your mother, I would have suspected that you were missing. How could that be? Su Peijian thought about what had happened in the past 2 days and felt a little guilty. She looked up at Lin Feixing. There were some things that she really had to make clear to him. Don't look at me like that. I don't want to investigate your whereabouts. I'm really just worried about you. I know. Su Peijian nodded. Lin Feixing was a good person. She knew that no matter what, this man was very suitable. However, things in this world were like this. Sometimes, what was suitable might not be what you liked. Sometimes, what you liked might not be what you thought was suitable. Although she knew that she was cruel, there were some things that she really had to make clear. Feixing, go ahead. Let's have a meal together later. I have something to tell you. Lin Feixing looked at Su Peijian's face and suddenly smiled. If you agree to go further with me, we'll go for a meal. If not, you might as well reject me now. He was so smart that Su Peijian didn't know what to say next. Feixing, actually it's okay. We're both adults. If you have something to say, just say it. I can accept it. After all, I'm not a child anymore. Su Peijian smiled at his words, but that smile was a little awkward. I've thought about it seriously. I think that we might not be very suitable. So, is it because we're not suitable, or is it because you like someone else? Lin Feixing looked straight into Su Peijian's eyes. Su Peijian suddenly smiled. How could she forget that although Lin Feixing was a good person, he was also a businessman? You can tell? Sorry, you. Lin Feixing didn't finish his sentence. He just looked at Su Peijian's neck. Only then did she realize what Lin Feixing was referring to. She had been entangled with Ling Jing for 2 days. One could imagine what kind of marks that man would leave on her body. She gritted her teeth secretly. This wasn't the time to be angry. I'm sorry. Su Peijian rarely experienced such an embarrassing moment. She was used to being straightforward, but she had always been quick to take revenge. She had promised to give Lin Feixing a chance, but she had done such a thing. She felt sorry for Lin Feixing. Don't say sorry. Lin Feixing spread his hands. Actually, I had a feeling before that you might have someone in your heart. But I didn't give up and wanted to give myself a chance. I didn't expect you to have already made your choice. Su Peijian was speechless. She was indeed unkind in this matter. Feixing, I'm really sorry. You're a very good person. Stop. Lin Feixing raised his hand. Forget it if you don't choose me. You still want to give me the good person card. I can't tolerate that. Su Peijian couldn't say anything else. Lin Feixing stood up. Forget it. You didn't choose me. You didn't have good taste. Yes. Su Peijian smiled and stood up as well. I admit it. Tell me, in what way is that man better than me? Seeing Su Peijian's thoughtful expression, he suddenly smiled. What's wrong? Is he better than me in every way? That's not it. Su Peijian couldn't say things that went against her heart. In the eyes of the secular world, he really isn't better than you. But sometimes, some things really can't be calculated according to the conditions. I understand. Lin Feixing nodded. You don't have to say any more. If you say any more, I'll suffer internal injuries. Then, Su Peijian looked at the documents on the table. The cooperation should still go on happily, right? Of course. Lin Feixing looked at her with a sad expression. This person is already empty. You can't let my money be empty too, right? Definitely not. Su Peijian really liked Lin Feixing's sense of humor. No matter what, thank you. If you really want to thank me, then cooperate with our company a few more times, and let us make more money. I promise. After seeing Lin Feixing off, Su Peijian sat down in her seat. She took out a mirror from her bag and looked at her neck. Sure enough, there was a very clear and obvious kiss mark on her neck. She rubbed her forehead as she felt a headache coming on. Ling Jing, this guy really. It seemed that she needed to remind him not to leave marks on her body next time. Definitely not. At night, when Ling Jing approached, Su Peijian raised her hand and covered his mouth. A what? Ling Jing took her hand away and lowered his head to look at her face. You don't want me to touch you? Chapter 853. Say it. I'm listening. As Ling Jing spoke, he kissed Su Peijian's neck again. Su Peijian firmly pushed him away again and sat up. What are you doing? They were taking a shower together in the bathroom just now. He wanted to do it again, but she refused, saying that it was too tiring to do it in the bathroom. He changed the venue now, but she wouldn't let him. Ling Jing was a little dissatisfied. He turned his head and was about to continue. Su Peijian held his face and forced him to look at her. Woman, what are you doing? Ling Jing, stop it. I'm serious. Yes. Say it. I'm listening. Be serious. She waved away his hand, which was about to make trouble again. Ling Jing sat up straight because of her attitude. Ling Jing, I promised to be with you. It's because I have feelings for you. I want to give you a chance, and I also want to give myself a chance. She had never loved anyone other than her family, whether it was Qiu Yanba, whom she was engaged to, or Hui Yifan. Her heart was half empty, and she wanted to try the feeling of not being so empty. Ling Jing, I hope you can respect me. How did I not respect you? Ling Jing felt wronged. He raised his eyebrows and couldn't hide the grievance on his face. Well, Su Peijian put on a thick layer of foundation on her neck to let herself walk out. I remember I told you not to leave marks on my body, especially on such an obvious place. She was actually wearing a shirt today. The collar was high, but Lin Feixing still saw it. She even had reason to suspect that Ling Jing did it on purpose. Ling Jing looked at the mark. There was no guilt on his face, as Su Peijian thought. He even smiled proudly. I just realized. TSK so beautiful. There was no way to communicate anymore. Su Peijian looked at him. Ling Jing, I'm serious. I'm serious too. Ling Jing pointed at her mark. I think it's like a rose as beautiful as you. It's so beautiful. Su Peijian rubbed her eyebrows. I have to go to work. I have to appear in front of people. I don't want others to give me this impression. It's not appropriate. Especially if a client or collaborator sees it, it will leave a very bad impression. Ling Jing, if you really like me as much as you say, I want you to respect me. After a moment of silence, the smile on Ling Jing's face disappeared. Are you angry? Why can't this person grasp the main point? Su Peijian sighed. Forget it. She regarded Ling Jing as a child, a boy younger than her, and psychologically immature. I'm not angry. I just want to tell you that the relationship between a man and a woman should be based on equality and mutual respect. This principle was like saying, I respect you, and I will accept everything about you with the greatest tolerance. I also hope that you can respect me, respect my bottom line and perseverance. I also respect that my life circle might not be the same as yours. Do you understand? Su Peijian spoke very seriously. She was the daughter of a noble family that Li Qinxue had personally educated. There were some things that she had her bottom line and her insistence on. They could joke around in private, they could be together, and they could even be in a relationship. Even if Ling Jing really didn't want to work for the rest of her life and just wanted to live like this, she could understand. Although she did not agree with that. This society was very diverse. She had experienced the ups and downs of life. She could bear different things and different people in this world. Since she had chosen Ling Jing, who had moved her heart, she did not want to break up easily. She had also considered the possibility of the two of them in the future. However, whether the two of them could go to the end did not depend on her choice and persistence alone. It also depended on the other party. She did not have too many requirements for Ling Jing. However, the most basic requirement for a lover was to respect and treat them equally. If she could not do this, she did not mind kicking Ling Jing out now. Her eyes betrayed her attitude. Ling Jing suddenly stopped talking. His lips were pursed into a line, and he seemed unhappy. He did not speak, and Su Peijian did not speak either. She had her bottom line and persistence. In some aspects, she would never give in. The air was frozen. Ling Jing looked at her for a long time, then suddenly reached out and hugged her. I did it on purpose. Rubbing his face against hers, Ling Jing looked up at her. That pair of devilishly beautiful phoenix eyes were now tinged with a tinge of sadness. You are so beautiful and so capable. I think there must be a lot of men pursuing you. The one last time was your suitor, wasn't he? I did this to let them know that you are mine now. Mine. Su Peijian looked at him and suddenly thought of Su Yusen. Seriously speaking, although Su Yusen was 7 or 8 years younger than her, he was not as childish as Ling Jing. On the contrary, Su Yusen knew what he wanted from a very young age. For example, he once had the chance to skip a grade, but he didn't want it. He said that he preferred to enjoy life. Another example was that Su Yusen had the chance to go abroad, but he felt that he should go to university in China first. He wanted to experience the atmosphere of a domestic university. If he wanted to go abroad, if he wanted to study, he would have the opportunity anytime. He was now preparing for the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's graduate school. Su Qinghui had mentioned this to her before. Ling Jing was the complete opposite of Su Yusen. In fact, Ling Jing was older than Su Yusen, but in some aspects he was really childish. Thinking about it, it was actually good. The adult world was full of twists and turns. People like Ling Jing, who were simple and direct, were really rare. What was more precious in this world than a pure and innocent heart? Ling Jing, let others know that it is not about such a method of proof. In fact, in my heart, I have already chosen you. This is the biggest affirmation. We don't need other people's recognition. You don't need other people's recognition. She thought for a moment, raised her hand to touch his cheek, and pressed her forehead against his, as if she was taking care of a little brother. After all, people live in this world. They don't need everyone to admit it. They don't need everyone to admit it. Then why are you still talking about me? Since he didn't care about other people's opinions, why should he care about a hickey on his neck? This is a matter of image. Su Peijian didn't think the two were comparable. It's harder for women to survive in this world than it is for men. If you let me go out with such a hickey to talk to people about work, have you ever thought about what others will think of me? Yes, I really don't care about other people's opinions. But this is the most basic respect for people, the most basic courtesy when talking to people about business. The meaning is different. Can you understand? It was rare for her to be so patient. She even forgot when was the last time she spoke so patiently to someone. She was beautiful, and she gave people the feeling of being beautiful and arrogant. At this moment, she held Ling Jing's chin with both hands and looked at him fixedly. Her eyes were soft, and her facial features were gentle. For a moment, Ling Jing actually felt motherly from Su Peijian. His heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, he didn't dare to look Su Peijian in the eye. He shook his head and pulled her hand down. Okay, I understand. I won't do this next time, okay? Don't be angry. I'm not angry. Su Peijian looked at his tone, which was exactly like that of a child, and still felt a little helpless. Ling Jing, living in this world, if you can always ignore other people's opinions and do as you please, it's a very good thing. But occasionally, we still need to take into account other people's opinions, not to please them, but to make our own life smoother. I don't know what your family was like when you were a child, but I think there are some things you should learn to understand and accept. That way, you can become more and more mature. Ling Jing was silent at this moment. He pulled her hand and drew circles. Maturity doesn't mean that we blindly obey the laws of this world. It also means that we have learned to make ourselves as happy and comfortable as possible under the existence of these laws. Ling Jing fixed his eyes on Su Peijian. Her clothes had been taken off by him just now. Now she was preaching to him without touching anything. But he seemed to see a pair of wings behind her, the wings of an angel. This kind of contradictory beauty made his eyes dim. He suddenly turned over and pressed Su Peijian under his body. His eyes, which were gradually turning red, revealed his current mood. The movements of his hands became a little urgent. Ling Jing. Okay, I'll listen to you. Ling Jing lowered his head to kiss her, and his voice disappeared into her lips. I will definitely make myself as comfortable as possible, so. There was no need to say the rest. Su Peijian understood. She was a little helpless, but she didn't stop him. She found that she was quite patient with Ling Jing. There were some things that she could let him change slowly. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peijian, and his slightly frowned eyebrows showed his current mood. The expression of wanting to say something had been hanging on his face for a long time. Finally, it was Su Peijian who took the initiative to speak. Mom, if you have something to say, just say it. We are mother and daughter. You don't have to feel embarrassed in front of me. I just want to ask, what's wrong with Feishing? Yesterday, when she went out to buy vegetables with Xiaoya, she met Lin Feishing. She asked Lin Feishing to come to her house, but she didn't expect Lin Feishing to say that he and Su Peijian weren't together now. Didn't you promise me before that you would give him a chance? After all, he was such a good man, and he didn't care about Su Peijian's past. It was really hard to find him. Mom, I gave him a chance. Su Peijian really did. However, she didn't feel anything for Lin Feishing. Some people didn't appear early or late, but because that person happened to appear at this time. But you haven't even been together for a few days. Mom, feelings are not about the length of time, but the moment of heartbeat. It felt a little strange to say this in front of Xiang Kaiping. Su Peijian felt a little uncomfortable, and she cleared her throat. Mom, anyway, I know what I'm doing. Don't worry about it. It was impossible for her and Lin Feishing. In fact, even without Ling Jing, she wouldn't have feelings for Lin Feishing. Peijian, how could she not worry? Xiang Kaiping really felt that Lin Feishing was a very good person. Do you know that Feishing is really a very good person? Mom, I said that I know he is a good person, but no matter how good he is, he's not the kind of person I like. Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything. Her expression was conflicted again. Su Peijian put her hand on her forehead, starting to have a headache again. Mom, really? You see, I'm such a grown-up. Don't treat me like a child. Su Peijian tried to soften her tone. In fact, Su Peijian was really helpless toward Xiang Kaiping in some aspects. Mom, believe me, I really know what I'm doing. Xiang Kaiping nodded. What else could she do if she didn't believe her? It was Su Peijian's own choice anyway. When Su Peijian returned to Rome Garden, she had just parked the car when she ran into Ling Jing, who had just returned. Ling Jing got out of the Cadillac. His face was cold, and he didn't seem very happy. He was wearing a custom-made suit with a model's figure. He gave people a particularly different feeling in a suit. Su Peijian wasn't in a hurry to get out of the car. She looked at Ling Jing and suddenly had a feeling. Ling Jing's appearance seemed to be his original appearance. On the other side, Ling Jing, who was about to enter the elevator, found Su Peijian's car. He smiled and walked in her direction. You're back. The smile on his face was too cheerful. It was as if the cold face of Ling Jing just now was her illusion. What's wrong? Ling Jing met her gaze and glanced at himself. Do you think I'm very handsome today? Su Peijian didn't answer his question. She looked at Ling Jing, who looked very formal in his formal suit, like a prince walking out of a castle. She frowned slightly. What have you been doing? Nothing. Ling Jing's expression changed slightly, but only for a moment. I have an interview today. Ling Jing smiled and pulled Su Peijian into his arms. So I'm dressed like this. What do you think? Don't I look very handsome? Interview? Yes. Ling Jing nodded. There's an interview this afternoon, so I wore it like this. Su Peijian didn't say anything. Ling Jing had worn a suit before, but when he wore it, he unbuttoned his shirt and rolled up his sleeves, looking sloppy. It was completely different from the aura he had when he got out of the car. She seemed to have seen this kind of aura before. It was as if she had seen it on someone before. What's wrong? Ling Jing had a very important meeting today, and he had to attend it himself. However, he didn't expect to talk to those old foxes for a long time. And then it didn't end. What was even more ridiculous was that his good brothers, 1, 2, 3, 4 all rushed to make trouble for him. Looking at Su Peijian, he naturally thought of his gloomy mood when he got out of the car just now. Another car drove into the parking lot. Su Peijian had no intention of standing here and arguing with Ling Jing. She glanced at him and signaled him to go upstairs first. Ling Jing followed behind her, and the two of them entered the elevator together. There was a camera in the elevator. Ling Jing wanted to come over and put his arm around Su Peijian's waist, but she gently took his hand away. What's wrong with you? Chapter 854. Su Peijian was silent and let the elevator take them upstairs. After getting out of the elevator, entering the door, and closing the door, she finally had time to look at Ling Jing. Her eyes were probing, sizing, and a little thoughtful. Ling Jing, who are you? I'm Ling Jing. Ling Jing took a step forward and opened his hands as if to hug her. No, it felt wrong. Su Peijian frowned slightly, but Ling Jing stepped forward and hugged her tightly. I feel so bad today. He hugged her tightly, and his masculine scent hit her face. I failed the interview today. You didn't even comfort me. Su Peijian was stunned and looked up at him. What did you say? I said, I failed the interview today, and you didn't even comfort me. His aggrieved tone made Su Peijian feel a little better. Interview. He seemed to have said it just now, but she felt that something was wrong. I went for the interview today, but I didn't succeed. Why didn't you tell me before? I thought if I could succeed, wouldn't I be able to give you a surprise? I didn't expect. He didn't finish his words, but Su Peijian could already understand what he meant. He looked gloomy because he failed the interview. Are you still angry? Ling Jing hugged her and looked at her face. What are you angry about? Nothing. Su Peijian shook her head. Maybe she was really thinking too much. What position did you interview for? Real estate agent. Ling Jing blinked. And then they said I was not sincere enough. He leaned in front of Su Peijian and stared at her with his beautiful almond-shaped eyes. Am I not sincere enough? Su Peijian's doubts just now dissipated. Looking at Ling Jing's sloppy appearance, she didn't know how to tell him. Ling Jing, I'm so sincere. Look, I even went there in a suit. Su Peijian's brows furrowed again. Don't tell me that you wore this suit and drove your car to the interview. Yes. Can't I? Su Peijian held her forehead and looked at Ling Jing. For the first time, she asked him seriously, have you had any experience in interviews before? Yes, wasn't it the warehouse manager last time? Did you wear a suit when you interviewed for the warehouse manager position? No. Ling Jing shook her head and said quite frankly, I passed by that door last time and happened to see it, so I was interviewed. As for what to wear, I forgot. Forget it. Su Peijian didn't want to talk about it anymore. In a place like a warehouse, who would care what you wore? However, the agent was different. He was dressed in such a glamorous outfit. Which company would want him? Who wouldn't think that he might be some rich second-generation kid who was just here to play for a few days and experience life? What happened to you? It's okay. Su Peijian knew that this was a huge project. It would take more than a day or two to make Ling Jing understand. Forget it. Let's eat. Don't count it. Tell me, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. Su Peijian didn't know how to respond. Forget it. Think carefully about what you want to do. You mean it's not suitable for me to go out and find a job? It's not that it's not suitable. Su Peijian was thinking about how to explain it. I just think that it's not good for you to do whatever you want now. Why don't you calm down and think carefully about what you want to do in the future? Okay. Ling Jing smiled and leaned over, kissing her on the lips. I'll listen to you. After saying that, he hugged her tightly, looking like a big panda. Seeing him like this, Su Peijian's anger and suspicion disappeared. Ling Jing, whose chin is resting on her shoulder, has a smug smile in her eyes. Today's operation. Full marks. Su Peijian sat in the office and read a few professional analysis reports in the industry. In the end, she put all the reports on the table and didn't pick them up again. In fact, these professions looked good, but none of them were suitable for Ling Jing. With Ling Jing's personality, it wasn't a big problem for him to deal with people. However, he looked sloppy, but in fact he was full of pride, and he was a little conceited. In her opinion, such a person should be his own boss. But his current ability. Su Peijian rubbed between her eyebrows, feeling a headache coming on. She found that she was actually like an elder, starting to worry about a man's future. In fact, the most important thing was to reassure Xiang Kaiping. As far as she was concerned, it didn't matter at all. Thinking of Ling Jing, who was becoming more and more like a child with her these days, Su Peijian felt a headache coming on. When she got home, Su Peijian found that Ling Jing hadn't come back yet, and the room was dark. Where did this guy go? Su Peijian turned on the light, only to find that it seemed to be broken. She tried several times but couldn't turn on the light. Thinking that maybe the fuse was broken, she was about to check it herself and see if she should ask someone to fix it. Suddenly, there was a bright light in front of her. She instinctively narrowed her eyes, and when she recovered, she found that there was a clown wearing a mask standing in front of her. Su Peijian was startled by the sudden appearance of the clown and instinctively stepped back. Her body was pressed against the door, and her hand reached for the door handle. Just as she was about to quickly escape, she suddenly found that something was wrong. The clown didn't pounce on her, but stopped there and reached out to her. The clown's hands were wearing gloves, but she also reacted at this time. Instead of holding the clown's hand, she crossed her arms in front of her chest and stared at the clown. The clown seemed to be very dissatisfied with her action, and he pulled her into his arms. He snapped his fingers and the music started. She was held by him, and they danced in the living room. Su Peijian had specially learned how to dance. The clown's dance steps were not bad. The living room wasn't big, and the two of them couldn't perform very well. But it was barely enough. Looking at the face in front of her, who was wearing a mask, Su Peijian got used to it after spinning in a circle. What are you doing? The person under the clown mask didn't respond, and she was held and spun in a circle again. The music continued, and finally the music stopped. Happy holidays. Ling Jing's voice sounded. He took off the mask and smiled brightly at Su Peijian. It's you. Although she knew it was him, Su Peijian still felt a little uncomfortable looking at Ling Jing in the clown costume. What are you doing? He was dressed as a clown, and he was dancing with her? Was it his birthday today? Happy holidays. Ling Jing smiled brightly, picked up a bouquet of roses from the coffee table next to him, and placed it in front of Su Peijian. Su Peijian looked at the big bouquet of flowers, and then looked at his incongruous clown costume. It was really a little inexplicable. What holiday? Why don't I know about it? Valentine's Day had long passed, and Chinese Valentine's Day hadn't come yet. Even Labor Day was a month away, so she didn't know what holiday he was referring to. April Fool's Day. Su Peijian was shocked by these 4 words. She looked at Ling Jing blankly, and it took her a long time to find her voice. April Fool's Day? Yes. Ling Jing threw the mask aside, stepped forward, and put his arms around her waist. I'm with you so naturally, I have to remember every meaningful day, including April Fool's Day, Labor Day, and Children's Day in the future. Su Peijian looked at Ling Jing in front of her, and really didn't know what to say. You're dressed like this? To celebrate April Fool's Day? Yes. Ling Jing nodded, and with a matter-of-fact expression he said, Actually, I wanted to scare you by pretending to be a ghost, but I was afraid that you would be scared, and my heart would ache. I could only dress as a clown. How is it? Did it scare you? Su Peijian rubbed the space between her eyebrows. She was thinking about what kind of way to find for Ling Jing in the company, but Ling Jing was thinking about what to do at home to scare her by pretending to be a clown. How could this person be so childish? And it just so happened that he was so childish and cute. You scared me. Just now, he suddenly jumped out and really scared her. Really? Ling Jing's expression changed. I've already picked a lot of them. This mask is the most gentle one. I'm not talking about a clown but... Su Peijian looked at him. But in the end, she didn't say a word. There was a trace of a slight touch in her heart that was constantly expanding. Ling Jing might have used the wrong method, but who could say that April Fool's Day wasn't a holiday? There would never be a shortage of smart people in this world, but few people would be willing to put themselves in the position of a fool. Ling Jing could dress as a clown for her. There was no other thought in her mind now, and she completely forgot the scare just now. She only felt that Ling Jing, who tried so hard to dress as a clown, was really cute. Thank you. She glanced at the roses in front of her. The flowers are very beautiful. Of course, I kept an eye on the shop assistant, and let her pick them one by one. I even cut the stem at the bottom myself. Thank you. This wasn't the first bouquet of flowers Su Peijian had received, but it was a bouquet of flowers that Ling Jing had given her. She raised her head to look at him, and there was finally a hint of a smile in her eyes. It's very beautiful. I like it very much. It's good that you like it. Ling Jing picked her up along with the flowers. Since you like it, can you let me like it too? What are you doing? Su Peijian's body was suspended in the air. Let me put the flowers down first. No. Ling Jing shook his head. These flowers can't be put down. I have a use for them. What? I want to spread these flowers all over the bed, and then do it with you on the petals. Just imagining Ling Jing's words made Su Peijian's face heat up. This bastard. Can't you think of something else? Of course I do. Ling Jing didn't hide his indecency and shamelessness at all. There are a lot of petals. After making the bed, there are some leftover petals that can be sprinkled into the bathtub. The two of us can take a petal bath together. Su Peijian didn't know what to say. She only felt that not only her face was hot, but even her body was a little hot. Thinking of the scene that Ling Jing had described, she actually felt a little expectant. Don't deny it. You're also looking forward to it, aren't you? Ling Jing had a naughty smile on his face. When the corners of his mouth curled up, it was full of evil. Ling Jing knew. He carried her into the room. Later, as he said Ling Jing did, the petals of the rose were used to their intended purpose. In the end, Su Peijian was so tired that she couldn't get out of bed. In the morning, Su Peijian slept lazily on the bed. She didn't want to move. Her body was soft from head to toe. It was sore, soft, and uncomfortable. She glared at Ling Jing next to her. There was one really bad thing about this guy. He didn't know how to control himself. Ling Jing. Ling Jing grabbed her finger and kissed it. Her skin was so good. From head to toe, her skin, which was carefully maintained, was beautiful. Tell me. Don't come. I'm very tired. I think you're in good spirits. I'm serious. I'm serious too. Ling Jing was halfway through his actions. When he met Su Peijian's eyes, he put her hand down. You can't blame me. Blame yourself. You're too seductive. I can't help it. This person really never had more than 3 minutes of serious time. Su Peijian was very lazy today. She didn't want to get up to make breakfast. She called Zhou Mei and told her that she would be coming to the company later. She turned over and let herself snuggle into Ling Jing's arms. Ling Jing, have you thought about what you're going to do? It had been a few days since he failed the interview. He had been at home every day, doing these things. Although she was touched as a man, it really wasn't a long-term solution. Previously, Ling Jing worked as a warehouse manager in a warehouse near his home. Later, when she saw the injuries on his body, she didn't let him go again. In fact, she didn't mean to look down on the warehouse manager. She just felt that it was really not suitable for Ling Jing to do this job with his conditions. However, it was obviously not suitable for him to not work. After all, Ling Jing was too energetic. Instead of going to work, she focused all her energy on herself. She really couldn't take it anymore. I haven't thought about it yet. Ling Jing blinked his eyes with a casual attitude. He really didn't expect that a few words he said casually would be so easy to believe. Su Peijian actually believed him so easily. TSK. Thinking about it seriously, there really wasn't much sense of accomplishment. He couldn't wait to know what kind of expression Su Peijian would have on the day he exposed her real wooden eyes. It was really exciting to think about it. However, before that, he had to make her fall in love with him wholeheartedly. I've also tried, but I really don't know what I can do. Why don't you give me some advice? Su Peijian was silent. She looked at Ling Jing's appearance very seriously. With his ability, it was not easy to find an easy job now. However, his appearance was good. Perhaps he could go in a certain direction. She just didn't know if he was willing or not. Have you ever thought about being a model or an entertainer? After all, your appearance is not bad. Although he thought that if Ling Jing took that path, he would appear in front of more people. It was indeed a more suitable path for him. I don't want to. Ling Jing refused without thinking. What kind of joke was this? He, the dignified young master of the Ling family, was going to act coquettishly and be a dessert for others? Looking at Su Peijian's somewhat puzzled eyes, his tone softened. Being an entertainer is not good at all. Not only do I have to be exposed to the public, but I also have no private life. And that industry is very messy. I don't want to go. Su Peijian nodded. This was also a problem. When she was in Lin City, she had seen a lot of it. Chapter 855. Then what do you want to do? Afraid that Ling Jing would think too much, she added. I don't have to urge you to work, but people have to have something to do when they are alive. After all, idling around every day isn't a long-term solution. She doesn't mind if her man has a job or how much money he earns. But if Ling Jing doesn't even have a formal job, Xiang Kaiping will be worried. Xiang Kaiping had worked hard for half of her life, although it was impossible for her to really interfere with her choices. However, she had to at least make Xiang Kaiping feel that the man she had chosen was reliable. If Xiang Kaiping found out that the man she found was a good-for-nothing hooligan, Xiang Kaiping's high blood pressure and heart disease would be triggered. Ling Jing circled her waist and seemed to be thinking very seriously. Su Peijian didn't rush him. After all, it wasn't something that could be done in a day or two. Wrapping her waist in his arms, Ling Jing's hand caressed her waist very casually. How about I become a pastry chef? A pastry chef? Su Peijian had never thought about that. Why would you want to do that? The last time I went to the restaurant, I saw that you seemed to like the cake there. If I learn how to make pastries, I can make them for you next time. Su Peijian paused for a moment. The cake from that restaurant was indeed delicious. It tasted really good. She didn't expect that Ling Jing would take it to heart, just by tasting a few more mouthfuls. She pursed her lips and suddenly smiled. Sure. It was pretty good. It's a pretty good profession. Then it's decided. Ling Jing winked at her. I'm going to find a cake shop and learn baking. Seeing that Su Peijian was silent, he held her hand. What do you think? Was it really okay? If you don't like it, why don't you tell me what to do? But I'm not an artist. Su Peijian saw the fawning look in his eyes and shook her head. No, I think it's pretty good. I'll take this one. Won't you dislike it? Of course not. There was no distinction between high and low professions. Moreover, she was not short of money. It was good that Ling Jing had something to do. But she could afford to support him if he had nothing to do. Most importantly, it would be good if he could find something he liked to do. Go and learn. Once you've learned it, you'll have to learn it. I'm investing in a pastry bakery. When the time comes, you'll be your own boss. Okay. Ling Jing grabbed her hand and kissed her fingertips. That's settled. When Su Peijian walked out of the company, it was not yet time to get off work. She left early today to pick up Ling Jing and pick up a gift for her. Ling Jing came back yesterday and said that he found a dessert shop and started to work today. To celebrate his first day at work, Su Peijian wanted to give him a gift. Su Peijian wanted to laugh at the thought of Ling Jing dressing up as a clown just to celebrate April Fool's Day. In fact, she didn't feel surprised at all. Instead, she felt frightened. But for a man to have such intentions, she was really touched. Thinking of Ling Jing's childish look, she really felt a little conflicted. What should I give her? Lost in her thoughts, she unknowingly went downstairs. He walked out of the elevator, intending to go to the boutique department. However, she heard someone calling her name. Peijian. Su Peijian was no stranger to that voice. She turned around and saw Su Qingseng behind her. Peijian. Su Qingseng was holding the hand of a little girl, who looked about 1 year old. The little girl looked like she was carved from jade, and was very cute. Su Peijian was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect Su Qingseng to call her. Yes. After responding, she stood there. She didn't take a step forward, didn't leave, and didn't call Su Qingseng's sister. Compared to her coldness, Su Qingseng's attitude was much more amiable. She picked up the pink little girl in her arms and let her look at Su Peijian. Come. Nian Nian, call me aunt. Su Peijian was stunned because of this sentence. The little girl didn't seem to have seen her before and was very curious. She blinked her big eyes and looked at her. Call me aunt. Nian Nian. Aunt. Nian Nian was more than 1 year old. He could say some simple words, and he could also say a few simple sentences. Su Peijian suddenly didn't know how to react, because the other party called her aunt. She stared blankly at the little girl in front of her. The little girl was very beautiful, and had perfectly inherited all the advantages of her parents. When she called people in a childish voice, she was very cute. She was so soft and cute that people wanted to hold her in their hands and love her. Do you want to hug her? Su Qingseng smiled at her when she stared at Nian Nian like this. She carried Nian Nian and took a step forward. Nian Nian, do you want to let me hug you? Nian Nian's little face frowned. She looked at Su Peijian, and then at Su Qingseng. Finally, she nodded and reached out to Su Peijian. Aunt. Hug. Su Peijian stood still. She was stunned, as if she had been frightened. However, the moment Nian Nian reached out, she hugged her into her arms. It was very soft, a very small pink ball, and there seemed to be a milky fragrance on it. She swallowed her saliva, not sure if she could hold it firmly. She felt inexplicably flustered. You have to do this. Put this hand here, and this hand here. Su Peijian hugged the child with a subtle expression. After hugging her for less than a minute, she returned Nian Nian to Su Qingseng. Actually, it doesn't matter. The child isn't that delicate. Su Qingseng took her daughter back. Su Peijian didn't reply. She rubbed her nose and looked at Nian Nian uncertainly. Aren't there two? She heard that Su Qingseng gave birth to twins. Where was the other one? Think about it. It's very noisy. It's so naughty at such a young age. His father is carrying him in the children's area over there. I was holding Nian Nian's diapers just now. I'm going to look for them now. Then you go ahead. Su Peijian didn't think she had anything to say to Su Qingsang, but Su Qingsang was in high spirits. Peijian? Yes. It's not very convenient for me to carry the child today. If you don't mind, let's find a cafe to sit down and chat for a while? Afraid that Su Peijian would overthink, Su Qingsang added. I mean, there are some things that I might need to let you know. She knew that Su Peijian already had a boyfriend. However, old Master He finally relented and pleaded with Hu Jinyao to let Hu Yifan out early. After Hu Yifan came out, he would probably come to look for Su Peijian. She knew that Su Peijian had a boyfriend, but she had no doubt that Hu Yifan would go to look for Su Peijian when he came out. Talk. Su Peijian frowned. I don't think I have anything to talk about with you. As she spoke, she noticed that the little ball in Su Qingsang's arms was staring at her. So her tone softened a little. Some things are in the past. I won't think about it again. Some things are done, and I won't regret it. If you want to hear my confession, there's no need. I've already paid the price. If you feel sorry for me, there's even less need. I don't remember if I pitied you when you were an illegitimate daughter. Peijian. Su Qingsang wasn't angry because of her words. She hugged Nian Nian tightly in her arms. What are you thinking about? I'm your sister. Can't we sit down and have a chat? I also wanted to ask you, how has Auntie been recently? She had always felt guilty towards Xiang Kaiping. But now, in order not to make Li Qinshu sad, and in order not to let Su Peijian think too much, it really wasn't convenient for her to see Xiang Kaiping. Pretty good. Her health is good, and she's in good spirits. Recently, she seems to have fallen in love with watching a palace drama. Pretty good. That's good. Su Qingsang looked at Nian Nian, who was wriggling in her arms, and listened to her mumble the word miss. She knew that she was going to look for her brother. Since you don't have time, then next time. I'll take her to see her brother first. Su Peijian nodded slightly in response, and watched Su Qingsang leave in front of her. She stood there in a daze. She couldn't tell what she was feeling. It wasn't jealousy nor was it sadness. It was just a little confused. In the end, she still couldn't not care. In the end, there would still be some dark thoughts, feeling that she had stolen everything from her. She clenched her fists and chased these paranoid and dark thoughts out of her mind. She knew that she couldn't let herself continue like this. You've already paid the price once, so you can't do it again. Su Peijian told herself that, then turned around and continued to walk towards the boutique department. However, Su Qingsang's daughter's pink little face suddenly flashed through her mind. She had to admit that her genes were really strong. That little pink ball was indeed soft and cute. She wondered what that child would be like if she had a child one day. Would it be like her, or like Su Peijian, who realized what she was thinking, quickly shook the thought away. She was really crazy. Ling Jing was a child now. How could she dare to believe that he could shoulder the responsibility of being a father? However, there was a voice in her heart that told her that sometimes, she couldn't judge a book by its cover. Thinking of Ling Jing's act of pretending to be a clown to please her, Su Peijian suddenly felt that if Ling Jing really became a father, perhaps he would also be a good father. However, it was really too early to think about this now. Su Peijian sat in the car and waited for Ling Jing to come out of the bakery opposite. It was already the end of spring, but Rong City was still slightly cold. She had asked Ling Jing before, and Ling Jing said that he worked in this bakery. After waiting for about 15 minutes, she didn't see Ling Jing come out. She had sent Ling Jing a message half an hour ago. She was afraid that he was working, so she specially asked him if he had time. At that time, Ling Jing said that he had time. Su Peijian looked at the time again. Ling Jing hadn't come out yet. This bakery was very close to Rome Garden. She looked at the time and saw that another 15 minutes had passed. That meant that it had been almost an hour since she called Ling Jing, and he appeared. She thought about it and opened the car door. Just as she was about to get out of the car, she saw Ling Jing running all the way. He ran so fast that the open black casual jacket flew to both sides because of his movements. When he saw her, he seemed to show a bright smile, but he was panting. Did you wait long? He panted as he got into Su Peijian's car. Su Peijian looked at him and frowned slightly. She took out a bottle of water from the side and handed it to him. Why are you running like this? People who don't know would think that you went to participate in the 100-meter race. Wasn't that right? He was supposed to be at the company dealing with business. Unexpectedly, Su Peijian called and said that she would pick him up from work. His company was about an hour's drive from Rome Garden. He hurried and didn't encounter a traffic jam. No, it's just a little hot in the kitchen. He pretended to fan his face. Su Peijian looked at him with a little heartache and a little helpless. She directly took a tissue in front of him and wiped the sweat on his face. If you're not free, I can wait for a while. You can tell me. Her movements were rare. In her heart, because Ling Jing was younger than her, she would always be more tolerant of him. In addition to being moved, there was also tolerance. It was also because of her experience that she wouldn't care about these small things. She really didn't care. I was afraid that you would wait for me for too long. Ling Jing held her hand and let her wipe his sweat with a tissue. Finally, he grabbed her hand and said, "If I let you wait for too long, my heart will ache." Su Peijian glanced at him, wiped his sweat, and handed him a box. "This is a gift for you." "That good?" Ling Jing looked at the box. "Why is there a gift? What day is it?" "To celebrate your first day at work." Ling Jing held the box and looked at Su Peijian, who had a gentle expression. He suddenly leaned over and kissed her lips hard. After all, they were on the side of the road. Su Peijian pushed his body. He let go of her after kissing her enough and pressed his forehead against hers. "Personally, I prefer to celebrate in another way." This guy, really. Su Peijian didn't want to talk anymore. "Let's go eat. How about I treat you to Japanese food? I know a restaurant that serves good eel rice." "Okay." Ling Jing watched her start the car. He sat back in his seat, squeezed the box in his hand, and took out his phone. "What are you doing?" "Taking a picture." Ling Jing smiled at her. "To celebrate the first gift you gave me." Su Peijian couldn't help but smile. In fact, Ling Jing was really good. He was happy, and he was unhappy. His emotions were very obvious, just like a child. The moment she smiled, Ling Jing looked at her profile as she concentrated on driving, took a picture of her, and matched it with the box. However, he didn't post it on WeChat. The moment he put down his phone, he sent a message to Gu Xiao. His car was parked at the back door of the bakery, and he asked Gu Xiao to drive his car back to Rome Garden. This was not a long-term solution. He had to think of a way to stop Su Peijian from looking for him next time. He suddenly turned his face to look at Su Peijian. In fact, she had taken the bait. He had achieved his goal, and he could leave. But, for some reason, there was a trace of hesitation in his heart. He told himself that it was because Su Peijian hadn't fallen in love with him yet. Not completely and completely. He wanted to wait until she completely fell in love with him. And then he would unveil that layer of paper. At that time, it would be his complete victory. At that time, how would she react? Chapter 856. Why are you looking at me? Even though Su Peijian was driving, she could feel Ling Jing's gaze. I'm looking at you because you're beautiful. Ling Jing's face became a bit frivolous. I've never seen a woman more beautiful than you. Of course I have to look at you. Su Peijian wouldn't believe a word of Ling Jing's words. To him, it was possible that she was the prettiest one among all the female sugar moms who had supported him in the past. For some reason, thinking that Ling Jing had had other women, she felt a little jealous. Forget it. It was meaningless to care about the past now, as long as they only had each other in the future. They went to the Japanese restaurant that Su Peijian mentioned. After dinner, they went to watch a movie. The movie was an American sci-fi blockbuster, and it was very long. It was very late when they returned home. Su Peijian took a shower and lay down directly to sleep, but Ling Jing didn't let her sleep. She didn't know why that guy was very energetic today, but he pestered her several times. Later, she kept saying that she had to go to work, so he stopped. When she was in a daze, she felt Ling Jing's hand on her face. Without thinking much, She habitually snuggled into Ling Jing's arms. He hugged her from behind and buried his face in her neck. When she got up in the morning, Ling Jing also got up. Yesterday, the store manager said that we have to go early today. Yes. I'll give you a lift. Okay. Ling Jing nodded. But don't come to me next time. Yesterday was my first day at work, and I'll be busy until late today. Late? Su Peijian frowned slightly. Yes, I'm an apprentice, so of course I have to leave early and come back late. Thank you. Su Peijian's waist was a little sore. She stepped forward and kissed Ling Jing on the cheek. Then study hard, and strive to be your own boss in the future. Then you'll have more free time. Okay. Ling Jing nodded. Her expression was gentle, and there was nothing strange about her. Su Peijian followed him out. Ling Jing got out of the car and entered the bakery. After entering the door, they went directly to the back door, where Gu Xiu's car was already waiting. Gu Xiu looked at his young master, and really didn't understand what he was doing. He said that he wanted to buy a bakery. Who would care about such a small workshop? Was the Ling family's business not enough for him to play around with? However, as a subordinate, he had no right to speak. He drove Ling Jing to the company. After entering the company, Ling Jing changed her jacket and put on a suit jacket. When he returned to his office, his subordinates were already waiting there. Gu Xiu entered the door. After Ling Jing finished listening to the reports from her subordinates, she stood in front of him. Gu Xiu waved his hand, and those people left. The irrelevant people in the office had all left. Ling Jing glanced at Gu Xiu. What is it? Shun Lefyu has already made contact with the people we buried. Gu Xiu nodded. She should have believed us. I reckon she'll make her move in the next 2 days. After he finished speaking, he realized that Ling Jing looked absent-minded. Young master, after wiring for so long, why does Ling Jing not look happy at all? Isn't it just a matter of time? Anyway, it's just one of them. I'm not curious anymore. From the eldest to the 5th, none of them could escape. The ancient cultivator stood motionless. He only felt that Ling Jing was becoming more and more uncertain. After finishing the report, Gu Xiu turned around and was about to leave. However, Ling Jing suddenly stopped him. Gu Xiu turned around and saw Ling Jing staring at him strangely. Young master, let me ask you something. What? I remember that you have a girlfriend, right? Yes. Gu Xiu didn't understand why Ling Jing asked this, but he still answered honestly. I have a girlfriend. We've been dating for 3 years. Ling Jing's expression became more and more strange. Have you ever lied to your girlfriend? No. Gu Xiu shook his head. I'm not courting death. Why would I lie to her? Ling Jing's face darkened. She glanced at Gu Xiu coldly. You can leave now. Gu Xiu was confused, but he had no choice but to leave. He thought for a long time, but still couldn't understand. He only felt that the young master was really becoming more and more temperamental. What should he do? Su Peijian looked at the invitation in her hand and was a little lost in thought. The invitation was sent by Su Qingsang, the banquet of Tianyu Group. Why did she send me an invitation? Her phone rang at the right time. It was Su Qingsang. She frowned and hesitated for 3 seconds before picking up. Peijian, did you receive the invitation? Yes. I know that if Jingyao gave you an invitation, you wouldn't come. However, this is the group's. It was supposed to be for Dad, because Dad has some cooperation with some companies here. But Dad is in Lin City and can't come. He told me that some cases will be handed over to you, and you will be in charge of them. Yes. Yes. Because the cooperation with Lin Feixing's company went well last time. Su Qinghui used the excuse that he had to be in Lin City often, and handed over some cases that he thought were suitable to her. If that's the case, then you have to come. Meet those partners. Su Peijian didn't speak. Her expression didn't look good. Her fingertips held the invitation, and her expression was slightly cold. Peijian. Okay. I got it. I'll go. You can also bring a male partner. Su Qingsang reminded her very considerately. You can bring the gentleman from last time. No need. Ling Jing's personality was really not suitable for that kind of occasion. She had no intention of pushing Ling Jing into the upper class. It wasn't suitable for him. Okay. You can come by yourself when the time comes. After hanging up the phone, Su Peijian put down the invitation and looked at the words on it in a daze. Was she really going to interact with the Hua family and the Hua family's affairs again? What's wrong? When Ling Jing returned home, he found that Su Peijian didn't look good. He went forward and put the box in his hand on the coffee table, then sat down next to her and wrapped his arms around her waist. Why do you look unhappy? I'm not unhappy. Su Peijian shook her head. There were some things that she didn't know how to tell Ling Jing. How are you? Are you used to working for a week? Of course I'm used to it. Ling Jing hugged her tightly and lowered his head to smell the fragrance on her body. It's just that every day, the store manager likes to let us bring home the bread that can't be sold. Su Peijian looked at the bread on the coffee table. Next time, you should bring the cake that you baked yourself. Okay. Ling Jing let go of her and turned his face to the side. But I've just learned. My skills are very poor. It's okay. Su Peijian smiled. As long as the bread you baked is delicious, I'll definitely do you the favor. Then wouldn't I be very honored? As Ling Jing spoke, his hands began to be dishonest again. Su Peijian didn't refuse him. Other than her menstrual period, their daily entanglement had become a necessity, just like eating and sleeping every day. He was very tall. He easily picked her up and went to the room. With Ling Jing around, the emotion she felt when the Tianyu group sent the invitation card to her dissipated under his actions. A few days later, it was the day of the banquet held by Tianyu group. Ling Jing didn't work the night shift this time. Their bakery had 2 shifts every day. 1 week was the night shift, and the other was the day shift. Ling Jing said that from this week onwards, they would work the day shift. Yesterday, he asked her to promise to come back to eat with him. Where are we going to eat tonight? Nowhere. Su Peijian put on her makeup and stood up. I have plans tonight. What plans? Ling Jing stepped forward and hugged her waist. Are you going to talk business with a male client? Although he had arranged for Ying Tianlong last time, he was really afraid that Su Peijian would meet such a person. Su Peijian didn't pay attention to the nervousness in Ling Jing's words. She knew what he was thinking, but in this world, not everyone would be like Ying Tianlong. There's a banquet at Tianyu Group. I'm going. Tianyu Group? Ling Jing was stunned. Why was Su Peijian going to Tianyu Group's banquet? Su Peijian then realized that Ling Jing might not have heard of a company like Tianyu Group. We have some business cooperation. Su Peijian didn't tell him about her relationship with Su Qingsang. She didn't know where to start or how to say it. She didn't say it, and Ling Jing wasn't curious. After all, he already knew what he wanted to know. Then you go. I'll help myself. Okay. Su Peijian was about to leave, but when she saw Ling Jing's face, she turned back again and kissed him on the cheek. Okay, I'm leaving. You can order takeout at home, or ask Xiao Xiao to come over and cook for you. Okay. Su Peijian left. Ling Jing packed up and was about to go to the company. His phone rang. The name displayed on it was an old woman. Ling Jing frowned and picked up the phone. Mom, it's rare that you still remember me as your mother. Lu Xiyun's voice came from the other side of the phone. How long have you not been home? It hasn't been that long. Didn't you just come back a few days ago? Yes, I just came back a few days ago. But after I came back, I left in a hurry after a meal. I didn't even stay at home for a night. What do you want me to say about you? Mom, didn't I say that I'm busy with work? Don't be cheeky with me. Busy? How busy? So busy that you didn't even go back to the Imperial Villa? You didn't even stay at the company? Tell me honestly, where are you? Where can I be? I'm at the company. What a coincidence. I'm at your company now. Lu Xiyun's words made Ling Jing hold his forehead. Mom, what do you want? There's a banquet tonight. Your father is not well and can't attend. Why don't you accompany me? Banquet? Ling Jing's forehead twitched. What banquet? Tianyu Group's banquet seems to be an anniversary celebration. It's very big. Many people from the business world will come. Even the mayor of Rong City will come. Ling Jing held his hand there without moving. He thought of what Su Peijian had said before. She seemed to be going to Tianyu Group's banquet tonight. Chapter 857. Are you listening to me? Ling Jing was still absent-minded when Lu Xian's voice sounded. This time there was obvious dissatisfaction. Let me tell you, it's fine if you don't want to go home, but you have to accompany me to the banquet tonight. Mom, I really have something to do. I don't care what you're doing. I'll send the address and time to your phone later. You can show up on your own tonight. Did you hear me? After Lu Xian finished speaking, she hung up the phone without giving Ling Jing any time to react. Ling Jing looked at his phone and thought that Su Peijian would also go to the Tianyu Group's banquet tonight. Now Lu Xian wanted him to go. What was this? Ling Jing threw his mobile phone aside in annoyance, and his face was gloomy. Su Peijian had attended many banquets, except for the last time when he tried to steal Su Qingsong's limelight, which ended in an unexpected failure. She almost never missed. Standing in the boutique, she came to pick up the dress she ordered a few days ago. The invitation arrived just in time, giving her a chance to make some alterations to the dress she had ordered. She is on the thin side. It was just that her bust was more impressive than the average woman's. In order to keep a low profile, she chose a black dress. The neckline design exposed both sides of the shoulders. The soft muslin began to shrink around her waist until it was too tight to hold. She turned around and looked at herself in the mirror. She was satisfied. At that moment, the stylist took out a pair of black high heels and placed them in front of her. He looked himself up and down. Not bad. I should be able to control the situation. By the time Su Peijian entered the banquet hall, many people had already arrived. Most of them were unfamiliar faces, and she didn't recognize many of them. She wasn't surprised to see the mayor of Rong City there. In the past 2 years, Tianyu Group had really become more and more powerful. Su Qingsong saw her from afar. She handed the baby to the nanny and walked towards her. Today, as the wife of the president of Tianyu Group, she looked noble and elegant in her blue dress. She had to admit that Su Qingsong's temperament was getting better and better after marrying Hu Jinniao. Peijian, you're here. Su Qingsong smiled warmly and said, there are many guests today. I'm afraid I can't entertain them all. However, there are a few friends I met after coming to Rong City. Can I introduce them to you? I have a companion too. There's no need for that. Su Peijian shook her head. You should get back to work. I can take care of myself. All right then. She knew Su Peijian's personality very well. There was no point in saying anything more. Su Qingsong said a few more words and left. Over the past 2 years, she had been in the industry for a long time, so she was more and more at ease. Su Peijian watched quietly for a while before finally withdrawing her gaze. She was just about to find a quiet place to sit down when she saw a noblewoman walking in from afar. That woman gave her the feeling that she was somewhat familiar. Su Peijian was still trying to recall where she had seen her before. That rich lady was greeting people, but for some reason, she was picking people to greet. Then, she walked to the side and picked a place to sit. Her seat happened to be behind a screen. Su Peijian was sitting behind him. The woman's face was indeed familiar, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember who she was. She seemed to see someone familiar in front of her, and then she heard the voice of the rich lady on the phone. Jing, didn't I tell you to come over? Where are you? You're brave now. You don't take me seriously anymore. I asked you to pick you up, but you said you would come by yourself. Where are you now? What? Something came up and you can't come? What is it? I already told you this morning. Jing? Su Peijian's footsteps stopped there. Then she shook her head. How could it be so coincidental? Must it be Ling Jing's Jing? Maybe it was some other word. Without thinking much, she turned and left. After she left, the rich lady's temper rose. Ling Jing, do you still respect me as your mother? Ha! Sister-in-law? Hello, sister-in-law. The sudden greeting made Su Peijian stop in her tracks. She looked at the person. It took her some time to remember who the person in front of her was. Wan Xiuzhe and Lin Nianji, Wu Yifan's friends. At that time, She and Hu Yifan used each other and hung out together. Because Hu Yifan's friends were younger than Hu Yifan, they were very happy to call her sister-in-law. It was a little ironic. Hu Yifan's status in the Hu family was not low. However, because the people from several big families in Rong City were all on good terms with Hu Jiniao. Wan Xianyang from the Wan family, Su Chonglong from the Su family, Tang Mohan from the Tang family, and Chung Xianyan from the Chung family. After the heirs of these big families were decided, they naturally had fun with Hu Jiniao, the appointed heir of the Hu family. However, Hu didn't have some shameful things to say. This Wan Xiuzha was the illegitimate son of the Wan family, and Lin Yinji was the illegitimate son of the Tang family. Wan Xiuzha was fine. The Wan family at least gave him a surname and recognized his identity. Lin Yinji was still not recognized by the Tang family and still followed his biological mother's surname. These two and a few others didn't have good backgrounds. They couldn't rely on Hu Jiniao, so they all relied on Hu Yifan. Wan Xiuzha and Lin Yinji had a good relationship with Hu Yifan back then. Su Peijian didn't intend to make things difficult for them, but her voice was very cold. Don't call me sister-in-law. I'm not your sister-in-law. Sister-in-law's words are too hurtful. Our brother Fan is thinking about you every day in prison. These words were very reasonable. In the past 2 years, Hu Yifan had been in prison more or less because of her. If she hadn't taken Qi Shiwei's plan, Hu Yifan wouldn't have been sentenced to so long. However, she said, I have nothing to do with him now. You don't have to call me sister-in-law. After saying this, she was about to leave. However, Wan Xiuzha blocked in front of her. Sister-in-law, don't be in such a hurry to leave. Brother Fan is about to come out. He'll be released in a few days. Sister-in-law, do you want to come with us to pick him up? Hu Yifan was coming out. Didn't he serve a longer sentence than her? Su Peijian didn't ask back then, but she vaguely remembered that Hu Yifan's sentence was longer than hers. Was he coming out so soon? It seemed that old Master Hu was still too soft-hearted. Sister-in-law, Wan Xiuzha wanted to say something, but Su Peijian didn't want to listen. I'll say it again. I'm not your sister-in-law. Secondly, Hu Yifan and I broke up a long time ago. So what happens to him has nothing to do with me. She didn't even use the word breakup. Because to her, there was no such thing as a so-called breakup between her and Hu Yifan. They had cooperated with each other, and after they finished using each other, they each received the punishment they deserved. Wan Xiuzha and Lin Yinji looked at each other, as if they didn't expect Su Peijian to be so heartless. For Su Peijian this was enough, because meeting these two people had greatly affected her mood. Not long after, she sat in the corner and listened to the gossip for a while, looking at the various attitudes of the people who came to attend. She was already familiar with these people, so she wasn't unfamiliar with them at all. But now, she was inexplicably annoyed by what she had enjoyed in the past. Listening to those women talk about the beautiful jewelry of this store and the beautiful bags of that store. She lost interest for the first time. She went to say goodbye to Su Qingsang and left. As for the other members of the Hu family, she was no longer interested in seeing them. Before leaving, she saw from the corner of her eye that the rich lady from before was still on the phone. Occasionally, the whispers of two women who passed by just happened to pour into her ears. Did you see that? She gave up being the best actress and ran to be someone else's lover. Now she even openly appeared in front of the public. How shameless. I saw her. Shoo, don't mention it, don't let her hear it. What does it matter if she hears it? She dares to do it, so why should she be afraid of people talking about it? Su Peijian followed their gazes and glanced at the rich lady. It was only then that she remembered who that woman was. A long time ago, an actress who had won 2 Best Actress awards. Her surname seemed to be Liu. She remembered it because she and Li Qianxue both liked the movie that won the Best Actress award. Both of them had watched it. It wasn't until Su Peijian got into the car that she finally remembered the name of the Best Actress. Her name was Liu Xiyun. No wonder she looked familiar. Her every movement was indeed charming, but she didn't expect that she was actually being someone else's lover now. But what did that have to do with her? These stars, these people, didn't they come and go like this? Why should she be surprised? When Su Peijian returned home, she found that Ling Jing wasn't at home. She frowned slightly. If she remembered correctly, Ling Jing said that he wouldn't be working the night shift tonight and would come back early. Su Peijian took out her phone and called Ling Jing. The phone rang in the room. She went in and found that Ling Jing didn't bring his phone. Where did this guy go? Su Peijian thought about it and was about to change her clothes to find Ling Jing when Ling Jing came back. As soon as he entered the door, he saw the gown Su Peijian was wearing. Su Peijian had left in a hurry. It was a little cold outside, but she was too lazy to change. After thinking about it, she decided to go home first. When Ling Jing saw Su Peijian, he suddenly couldn't move his eyes away. The black gown really suited her. It made her look like her skin was creamy and outstanding. Where did you go? In the study. In the study. She had forgotten to go to the study just now. What are you doing in the study? Looking for some new cake recipes. Ling Jing's answer was a little absent-minded. Before Su Peijian asked again, he had already stepped forward and picked her up. You are so beautiful today. With his arms around her waist, Ling Jing's hand happened to touch Su Peijian's back after the first compliment. There was a hollow part there, revealing more than half of her waist. His expression suddenly changed. You didn't go to the party wearing this today, did you? What else? Ling Jing's teeth were a little sore. Looking at Su Peijian, he couldn't help but bite her collarbone. Next time, don't wear such revealing clothes. It was best to wear it at home. Ling Jing. Was there something wrong with his eyes? Which part of her clothes was revealing? But before she could finish her words, Ling Jing had already put her body on the bed. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.